Good morning, everyone. We start our session today, and I'd like to emphasize that we have a very interesting event, an educational event, and we have the best speakers in their subjects. They come from all over the world. And I may talk about all over the world. I may talk about California, for example, or Israel, or Denmark, or Sweden. And we have also speakers from Spain, from more 5 or 6 countries. Beside of that, in terms of streaming, we have more than 6,000 people watching what is happening here. We have more than 85 countries and more than 270 cities. So we have really a very powerful way to disseminate knowledge. And knowledge is very important because this is something that gives us power to move forward. We are going to start now with a presentation from the Deputy CIO of Kyiv. Last year, we have the Mayor of Kyiv as a speaker and speaking direct here, live. And in this moment, it's very important that you give support because they are in great stress, but still working and doing things, including related to city and smart cities and technology. And they develop also fast one way that they can communicate with the citizens, because what's happening, they don't know what's going to happen, and they need to communicate. So we are going to have a presentation now. It's Anatolii Vovniuk, Deputy CIO of City of Kyiv. We start now.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you about a digital phenomenon that has changed the way of life and communication in our beloved city of Kyiv. Just an umbrella protects us from rain or sun. Kyiv Digital has become my digital umbrella, providing the necessary services and information for safe and better city life. Let me introduce myself. My name is Anatolii Vovniuk. I am Deputy Director of Information Technology in Kyiv City Council. With more than 20 years of experience in IT and digital transformations fields, in major sectors, including banking, telco, energy, and public sectors. During my career, I have successfully implemented more than 150 projects, and I am proud to be part of the Kyiv Digital team. As of today, more than 2.5 million residents of our city use Kyiv Digital app. No other smart city application in the world has this number of users. Let me take you back to 2020, the year that changes our world. The COVID-19 pandemic forced us to quickly adopt to new realities. In August of the same year, the Kyiv Digital project was initiated as our response to these challenges. It has quickly become a digital reflection of our city connection to its residents, providing vital information while minimizing physical contact. One of the first services was payment for public transport, which significantly increased the safety of both drivers and passengers. In 2021, e-democracy elements were integrated into the app, giving citizens the ability to initiate and vote on projects, submit petitions, and participate in polls. Also, parking and fine payments services have improved order to city streets, and information on air quality and radiation level has become available. 2022. On February 24, everything changed. The war began. Kyiv Digital responded quickly by introducing function for informing about air raids and maps with nearby shelters. Working with local businesses helped provide information on first aid, suppliers, product, and more. Despite the ongoing war, in 2023, the app continues to evolve, offering city train payments, a virtual transport card, enhanced survey features, and improved parking features. It's more than a program. It's a lifeline that protects and helps our users to be more safety and happiness. Our user base continued to grow and stability become paramount. To improve performance, some services have been moved to the Microsoft Azure cloud, and we sincerely thank to the Microsoft team for their support. Kyiv Digital is not more than just an application. It's a comprehensive solution that integrates key municipal information systems into the ecosystem of our city. It covers public safety, e-democracy, transportation, housing, and city government tools, all with the goal of making our city better, safer, and more comfortable. Our achievements are recognized worldwide. More than 98% of our users are satisfied with the application. Most appreciation the e-democracy and smart mobility tools. So what's next? We dream of seeing such a digital umbrella as Kyiv Digital in every city of Ukraine and the world. Imagine the safety, convenience, and empowerment this could bring to the city around the world. It is dreamed for every major or community leader to hear the voice of their residents, provide timely information, and make life in the city safer and more convenient. Kyiv Digital has shown us what is possible, and this is a vision we should strive for. Thanks for your attention, and let's continue to build a brighter, smarter future for our cities and beyond.
We need to support Kyiv. We need to support Ukraine. And always in our events, we are bringing the information. We need to be aware that we need peace. And that's the way that we need to live, the best way. Now, I would like to introduce Paul Doherty. Paul Doherty is an architect, and he's working with the different activities. We start long time ago when I was organized Smart City in Brazil with Paul and Jonathan. Also, he started a hackathon, and it's very famous hackathon. Which issue you are now? It's 5 or 6 years already. The hackathon, yeah. And in this hackathon is traveling all over the world, bring innovation. And now he has a strong, let's say, subject to bring to us, talking about reimagining the urban experience. Paul.
Thank you. Hey, good morning. Good morning. My name is Paul Doherty, and I'm a recovering architect. This is a 12-step program, isn't it, over here, right? Actually, I say that with all deference to the profession, because we're being challenged in the built environment to start to reimagine and start to rethink just what are we doing, right? A lot of it's been raising awareness, having 14-year-old girls wagging her finger at us at COP27, and what are you doing to our world and all this. And I take that with a grain of salt. Right, because I think all of us here, especially in this audience, we do a good job of at least having this type of conversation. So I want to thank Bernardo for bringing us all together on an annual basis now here in Miami to have that type of discussion. So what do I do? Well, this is working correct. I just want to make sure our AV guy is there. Next slide, please. Great. So I had a funky career path, right? Although I'm a licensed architect and a builder and now a real estate developer, really where I think I'm still learning and I'm learning to see better is about innovation and about how when I take a look at things and I'm learning how to see again, is about how everything is connected to everything. And I think one of the things that we tend to, perfect, thank you. One of the things that we tend to do is we get so focused in on our subject matter expertise that sometimes we forget about those connections. But when I do take a look just out in this audience, Jonathan, Bernardo, others that I've known for a while, we're all interconnected. And I think that that is the message of what this particular conference here in Miami is all about, is that your expertise is important, but when you connect them to another expertise, suddenly you have an ecosystem. And that's really where the logistics about how we operate as an organization works. So I run a company called TDG, or the Digit Group. We have a very unusual business arrangement with the government of the United Arab Emirates, in that they are my 50-50 partner in a venture to go out and do what's called impact investing. So what you're going to see over the next half hour is a different type of view of the world, only because I feel like I'm living the movie of Forrest Gump. I have the most amazing stories, and they're all real. I don't know how they happen, but I do know that I'm Irish and I'm very lucky. So that's what really you're going to see, is this whole world of going, wow, so that's happening. And that's really what I wanted to say over the next 30 minutes. We've been very fortunate to have the mass media take a positive view about what we're doing, which is very unusual in today's news cycles. But that's why, when we're asked to be on, CNBC and Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal and Forbes and all this stuff, it's because we're doing something that is global. We do have a wonderful network, and thank you, Bernardo, for raising about the AEC Hackathon. We started that in 2013, based upon this idea that we need to bring things together. And I was fascinated by this idea of a hackathon, because a lot of my friends that are in IT in Silicon Valley were doing these hackathons on behalf of these larger IT organizations like Oracle and Hewlett-Packard and Apple and stuff like that, where every weekend they would host these events where you would come in and you would try and break something, because that's what the large IT companies wanted to do. Instead of going out and just having user case studies, they held hackathons. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be really cool to actually hack our industry, the built environment? And we did it, and Mark Zuckerberg thought it was such a good idea that he gave us Facebook headquarters hack room for 2 years in a row to host this idea of bringing IT professionals and thinkers and architects and engineers and contractors together to start taking a look at our capital assets, our infrastructure, and let's start hacking it. So right now we're a global community of over 10,000 people. We're hosting, I believe, the first week in October in Helsinki, Finland, the next generation of the AEC Hackathon. And this is the spirit about how we run our company. Let's start hacking things, right? Let's start taking these challenges and not just describing it about how bad it is, but let's start taking a small way of chipping away. And so where I got a lot of this inspiration from actually came from this photo. This is where I grew up as a fledgling intern architect, right, where this was called asses and elbows, right? It was the draft room where if your butt was up and your shoulders were up and your elbows, you were doing work, right? Because you were composing sheets in order to communicate to the contractor how to build your design, right? And then, of course, I thought that was fun. I enjoyed it. I also like writing specs. Yes, I'm a nerd geek when it comes to that. But what's interesting about the photo is that when CAD came out, I decided, let's give it a try. So I got into AutoCAD, which was like a large electronic pencil. And I saw a lot of its fallacies, but I also saw a lot of its opportunities. But what I really loved was this group in 1997 that had this idea of creating a 3D view of how to do drawings. And they were calling it 3D parametric CAD. Well, I got involved, and we renamed it Building Information Modeling, and we renamed our company Revit, and Autodesk bought us. So yeah, I'm responsible for that. Don't throw tomatoes, sorry. But BIM is something that I thought was going to be a tool for the type of people that didn't exist back then. But Autodesk was selling to architects and engineers, so obviously they took BIM and forced it down everyone's throat, saying that it was a design tool. It is not. It was never meant to be that. It was never meant for architects. It was meant for a professional grade group of people that are now called virtual design and construction professionals. They didn't exist back in 2000 when Autodesk bought us. But the promise of what this does is that it communicates better. That's its intent. Again, communicate what the design is supposed to be on behalf of the owner to the contractor. Well, we've actually then went one step further. Right around the time that we were creating BIM, we got introduced to a group of folks that were tasked by the San Francisco Giants baseball team to showcase what their new stadium was going to look like, and they needed to explain and communicate to the stakeholders, like the mayor and the city council of San Francisco, what this new place was going to look like. So they didn't want to buy an expensive piece of software because they just wanted to showcase it. So I knew a guy named Tony Parisi down in Silicon Valley, and he was coming up with this new markup language for a browser called VRML, because at the time, HTML was how you created websites in 2D. He wanted to create in a browser a world in 3D. So at the time, he didn't realize it, but he was creating a gaming engine. And what we did was that we said, all right, well, let's do that, and let's start to document what we're doing. So in 1996, we created the metaverse inside of a browser for the San Francisco Giants baseball team, and it was published in my book in 1997. So when Mark decided that he wanted to create the metaverse, I brought the book with me to a meeting. I said, Mark, son, sit down. We wrote the book on this, literally. So a lot of these technologies that you're going to see in the next few minutes have been around for a very long time. There's been a lot of really, really smarter people than myself that have been diving into this world for a very long time. What's nice about now, it's like people are waking up that there's a new form of communication that is allowing us in this Web3 world to reimagine ourselves, to express things differently, because we can now. We're not limited to the tools that allow us only to do, well, like the really bad buildings that we're seeing out there right now. People that understand, using Rhino and all these tools for BIM that create twisty buildings, stop doing that. It's like twisty buildings are enough. First of all, try and find furniture that fits in there. Imagine that, right? So we've done a lot of really cool work with tech. Instead of doing the asses and the elbows things my entire internship, my last 2 years I did work study out of New York Tech, where I went to undergrad school for architecture, and I worked with IBM. Why? Because I was sick and tired of doing bathroom details, and I wanted to do something else. So I became the designer for IBM globally for all of their trade show booths. So I got to learn how to pull computers apart, what token ring networks were about. I mean, really old school stuff, but I learned computers from the ground up. And the number one thing that I learned was that why do computer companies use other equipment manufacturers, OEM, put them together, put their label on it, and they call it a computer? I said, isn't that just building a building? We use other equipment manufacturers' materials and equipment and appliances. We pull them together and we call it what? Well, YVE Hotel, right? We call it Miami-Dade College. Buildings as computers has always been my passion. I wanted to make sure that if we could do that and then link the buildings together, we'd have the Internet of Buildings. And that's what we're starting to see now as the world of what the term smart cities could be. But really what we've learned about creating all these technologies over my entire career, not just the books and the metaverse and that type of thing, but we created Revit. We also created a facility management tool called Tririga, and we were doing really, really, really well. And because of that, the people in Silicon Valley, the venture capital folks on Sand Hill Road, people like Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia and these folks, they introduced me to these other technical people because I was like their golden boy. I was creating all these tools and selling them for acquisition. And I met up with this guy named Remy Arnaud. Remy had created a tool that did what was called scaling and tiling. And he got in a roll-up with a group called Keyhole, which you know is Google Earth. So Remy was part of the Google Earth team. And he and I were talking one time because we got introduced by this venture capital group. And he was expressing his displeasure of working at Google only because he said, I'm sick and tired of taking things like Street View and all of these images and then attaching data to the dumb images. He said, couldn't the data create geometry? So we pulled together some money and we created a new tool. And we called it Orbi. And then flooding out of everywhere, like IBM and Autodesk and others, what happened was they wanted to buy it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take a shot that I'm going to eat my own dog food. I'm going to use my own tool and actually create 3D images inside of a browser, which is what Orbi was. But it wasn't just a single building. It was a neighborhood. It was a district. It was an entire city. And so I was living in China at the time, and we started this program called the Smart Cities Program out of Beijing. And at that same time, Beijing was going through this huge urban redevelopment. Number one was for the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing, then the 2010 World Expo in Shanghai, and then subsequently other large tier one cities like Wuhan and Guangzhou had a railway system, subway, being built into these ancient cities. So we had a white canvas, and we had a really good stroke of luck, again, Forrest Gump, where it exploded. McKinsey and Company caught fire on this, and what happened was we started to rethink how we were communicating, right, out to the people that were building not just a single building, but entire cities, reimagining existing cities and brand new cities from scratch. Working with McKinsey was interesting because they introduced me to the Middle East, and that's when I was put on a program that was to reinvent the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So I was part of a team that created this plan for the kingdom called Vision 2030, which is still being used today about how to guide and wean off of the petroleum economy into another thing, whatever that's going to be. So my responsibility was to design and create the city of the future. It's called NEOM, and yeah, you can blame me. I was one of 6 people that actually put together the plan. I'm not responsible for the line. That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life, but everything else is pretty cool. Right. So where we started with this was to say, well, where's technology going from the aspect of how do we communicate differently? And now we have these master plans for these massive mega projects. How does that collide and not cause an accident? The first step was to rethink how we were communicating, and we actually took a look at this term, the digital twin, because there was a lot of marketing, a lot of people at conferences calling it the digital twin revolution and all this stuff, and going, isn't that just what we've been doing for the past 23 years with BIM? Yeah, kind of sort of is. Except the cool part about this is that it's not just communicating with visual information. This was communicating with data in behind a 3D image. So we were actually creating a digital asset that I thought was just wild, right? Because now we could mimic what was going on in the real world and start to simulate what could happen in the future. So with this, we started to put things onto gaming engines, which sped up the velocity of communication. So much so that when we started to do it, we, in BIM, we call the different levels of the imagery or the geometry levels of detail, or LOD. And the reason why we had this, this 10-step program, LOD 1, LOD 2, LOD 3, is because sometimes you don't need a photorealistic 3D image in order to swing a hammer to create the cabinet, right? You want a lower level of detail. That's why we have that sliding scale of level of detail. But what we were seeing was that when we put it onto a gaming engine so that we could communicate with others that did not want to open up an engineering software program, they wanted to view it in a browser, going all the way back to 1996 all over again, right? We keep on repeating ourselves, right? This turned out to be a huge big deal because now all of a sudden we can experience something, not just level of detail, but level of experience, sometimes called the level of engagement. And that's where we're at today, right now, is understanding the depth of how we can get into the information, immerse ourselves so that we can make informed decisions. So when we hear the word metaverse, there is no metaverse. It's emerging. There's pieces of the puzzle that are coming together, but it's not there from the aspiration of what it wants to be. And that will work itself out over time. And there will be no big announcement. The metaverse is here. It will just happen organically and will happen. I like to look at the analogy that the metaverse is actually outer space. You know outer space is there, but there's no there. You can't touch it, you can't feel it, but you can't breathe it, right? But in outer space, in order to define outer space, we have galaxies, we have solar systems, we have planets. That's where we're at right now. We're creating all these spaces so that we have a sense of being there. And by the way, everyone in this room, we are all immigrants in this new world. The only natives are the kids age 15 and younger. They're the natives in this thing. I have a 12-year-old son, right? And he seamlessly goes involved in his experience of life between the digital and the physical world. The United States government calls it the cyber-physical relationship. But it's real, right? These kids are just wired differently. And I thought it would be something where, it would be like a Ready Player One type of thing, that people are escaping real life and they just want to be involved like in this immersive world where they can escape from like the horrors of the real world. If we ever reach that state, we've done something wrong, right? That's not cool. What is cool, though, is augmenting experiences and highlighting things so that you can, again, reimagine yourself. Right? Because if you reimagine yourself and then you find others, now you're creating community, and that's what we're talking about with smart cities. It's about the people. And those people are going through a different level of experience. So there's a pecking order with this whole world of the metaverse, and if you have kids, you probably understand what I'm about to say. People start off younger with Minecraft. Suddenly they graduate to Roblox, and they've really graduated when they're nuts about Fortnite. And that's really where all this is going, right? We're learning from the kids, and that's what I'm starting to see from a practical aspect of how to implement things like gaming theory, gaming terms and knowledge into our world. This is an example of a level of experience. This is the work we did for the UAE government. This is some of the pavilions from the World Expo 2020. The reason why I show this is that you can start to see that, the level of detail can be anything you want it to be, photorealistic or not. But again, who's your audience? And that's what we're still like I'm seeing again. I'm relearning about how to express what is going to be, what is, and what could be. And that's really the promise of the metaverse, is this idea of how do you link in gaming theory into our practical world. And one way that we're doing it is that we're taking a look at places like Fortnite. And it really is a place. It's a destination that is a collective illusion that we all believe in. I'll say it again. It's a collective illusion that we all believe in. And that's really where we have to start rethinking things. Because if we think that, AI is going to take over the world and there's going to be a big easy button and buildings are going to pop out the other end, good luck with that. ChatGPT does not swing a hammer. We still have to get there, right? And AI is not going to take any jobs, not one job in the world. But a person using AI absolutely will. That's the difference now of what we're talking about with gaming, right? That the world of 3D is one piece of this, that digital asset. But to create a capital asset, it's going to be things like blockchain, things like machine learning and artificial intelligence that are like it's like your inner system. Right? It's your capillary system. It's your digestive system. It's all those pieces are going to make the 3D come alive or seem like it comes alive as an illusion. So when we start to take a look at how the kids were using gaming, the games never end, especially the online games like Fortnite. It's always on, 24/7. It's you and or your friends' experience of when you enter that game and you go through your period of time inside of that environment and then get out, right? You think the game ends, but it constantly is going on. Same thing with a construction site. Construction sites all over here in downtown Miami. Just go up on the corner over here, right? They're drilling right now, right? Because they're creating a bathtub because the water table's too high here. And you see the size of the buildings going up? The taller the building, the bigger the bathtub, right? Because you got to support all that. But check out what happens. Like right now, people are at work and the machines are going, but around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, the machines stop, and it looks like that the construction site stops. It doesn't. It keeps on going. So the things that we're doing on our projects around the world right now is that if we can hand off from the physical world of people actually working, wouldn't it be interesting if we then hand it over to the digital asset to keep it working when the humans go to sleep? And couldn't we do things like setting up AI agents, not chatbots? Chatbots are different. ChatGPT is kind of like a clown show, right? It's very cool, but it's a chatbot. What you really want is to train those computers to be agents, to be subject matter experts. And I'm going to show some examples here in a second about what we're finding out there. And it's staggering, the pace of how fast this is going. So when we start to think of the construction site being cyber-physical, wouldn't it be interesting that a lot of the things that you do normally when you get to a job site and you're in that job trailer first thing in the morning, and you're seeing who's going to be on site, reconcile for all the different schedules and monies from the day before, making sure that the materials are going to be coming on time, you're making phone calls. Imagine if that was all done at night through AI, so that when you got to the job site, you were just up and running. You weren't doing back office. Back office was taken care of. That's what we're experimenting with. So this is either going to be a spectacular failure or something really cool, and there's nothing in between. So that's where we're taking gaming theory to the next level. I'm also going to show you here in a second about this whole idea of avatars, and that is the mouse to the metaverse. Just so you understand. So avatars, these agents that look like 3D images of something. It could be a character, it could be yourself, it could be an animal. That's your user interface. That's your mouse and how you respond and you interact with the metaverse. And that's going to be an important piece here in the future when I start showing you what happens with AI and you have AI agents where they can actually be your subject matter experts working closely with you. The other industry that we're taking a close look at is Hollywood and their use of geometry and how that is communicated. So right around the time of COVID when it first hit, Disney had a big issue because they were using green screen technology, right? Big green screens, and they would use a lot of time for what's called post-production using computer graphic interface or CGI, right? So they would use a lot of talent, a lot of time, a lot of money to finish what the scene that was shot with the actor or actress, right? Well, what happened was they created a new type of way of shooting TV and film. They used very microscopic LED lights, millions of them. And what they did was they created a 270-degree concave screen of these LED lights along with the ceiling that was also LED lights so that you could quickly change scenes. You could actually be immersed in that scene, like in the case of The Mandalorian, that hit TV show on Disney Plus, right? If you're on Tatooine, if you're on the Millennium Falcon, if you were any of those, nostalgic Star Wars type of sets, you were immersed in there. There was no green screen. You were actually acting inside of those elements. Why? Because using building information modeling, you can actually take those 3D images, put it on a gaming engine, and actually project it into the LED studio. It's called the volume. It's the reason why those Disney TV streamed shows look like movies, but the budget of a TV show. So it changed Hollywood completely. So much so that they started to then capture the images of all the actors and how they acted and what they did and their temperaments. Did their eyebrow move up when they smiled? They caught all these idiosyncrasies because of these, not just projection, but they also then had the filming of these things. Well, it got so good that when they put AI behind it, they now have captured those actors and actresses' movements, sounds, how they talk, all their temperaments, and they now put it into AI. So they never have to hire those actors or actresses again. That's why there's a strike in Hollywood right now. Isn't that amazing? Wow. So we're learning a lot from giving life to our digital assets beyond the capital asset needs of building structures and infrastructure and even managing cities. We're now taking those same digital assets and putting them into other uses, in this case into Hollywood. So there's a huge new way of reimagining how we do this. And I think one of the ways that, again, we're challenging ourselves is how do we interface with all of this, right? So in this case, these are avatars. If you have an iPhone that is from 12 Pro Max onwards, you have a measuring device on it, right? And it's actually a LiDAR device. It's a light emitting imagery. So what it does is that you could put up your measuring device and start capturing the dimensions of this room in real time. It's called point cloud. That's called reality capture because it's static. But you can also capture motion capture. So how a person walks, how they play basketball, how they move, and then that becomes your avatar, because now it starts to reflect you and your as a user interface. What's really cool, once you have an avatar, although most avatars look like this, like pixelated Donkey Kong type of things, but what's cool is that you can actually put what's called skins on your avatar. You can change out uniforms, you can put capes on, you can have weapons and shields and all sorts of things. It sounds kind of trite, right? Last month, Epic Games, Fortnite, the avatars that are used in Fortnite, they have this digital currency called V-Bucks. If you go to CVS around the corner over here, or to Walmart or Target, you usually see like a board that has, Buffalo Wild Wings discount cards and TGI Friday cards and everything. You'll also see V-Bucks. You're probably wondering what that is, right? Well, for $25, you get 2,500 V-Bucks. And you, as a player inside of Fortnite, can then go to the store and purchase the latest cape, or you want to look like Beyonce, or whatever it is, right? Last month, revenue-wise, Epic Games did $1.2 billion in V-Bucks sales. I went, I'm going to follow the money, right? Because this is big, 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 big. So what we've done is that we went one step further and said, well, what would happen if we could create skins and create avatars that more or less look like this? Humanoids. This is Gabriella. She's a friend of mine out of San Diego running the MetaHuman lab for Epic Games. And what she's doing is she has a GoPro camera, and she has this script. And she goes through the script of being happy, sad, laughing, crying, all these different emotions in a 30-minute period. And the AI captures it in order for it to be in real time. So when you're starting to talk about this gaming theory, and you have the digital asset that the construction site never ends, this is going to be the new user interface. So as my physical being goes home and gets dinner and goes to bed, my avatar, my humanoid now is alive. So these things are happening really quick. This is the new mouse, just so you understand. And why we're doing this? Well, number one, I'm very curious, right? And I want to explain things because I've had a lot of spectacular failures in my life. And I think sometimes it's good to learn, don't go down that rabbit hole. In this case, I think we're onto something because even my son is interested in what I do for a living now, right? Attracting the younger generation, right? Because we need that type of discourse going back and forth. You can also create humanoids from scratch now. They have some amazing tools out there that replicate how you can do almost like deep fakes, right? That will replicate what that humanoid is all about. Again, this is a level of experience, level of engagement. You may not want to have that level of detail as your avatar, but know that it's available. We're also looking at toys and ways of, again, communicating in different ways. In this case, we partnered up with Netflix with one of their hit TV shows called Stranger Things, which I really enjoyed, right? But this last season, at certain episodes where the monsters come out, we put an Easter egg QR code for about 10 seconds up on the screen. So what happens is you go over there and you open up your phone, there's a link on that QR code, and it opened up an app. And what that app did was that it automatically takes your LiDAR of your phone and it analyzes your room. Let's call it the living room, right? And your big screen TV, your 80-inch screen TV is there, but it also takes into account the door that's next to the screen, the window, where your couch is, where the coffee table is. So that during the scene when the monster comes out, you're not just watching it on a big screen passively, you're actually immersed in it where the monster comes up out of your couch. And we enabled it where your phone would then be the weapon to fight the monster. So we're looking at this as a new form of, do you want to be passive or do you want to be actually enabled inside of these entertainment environments? So imagine when we're talking about these wonderful new spaces of the building is computer and the buildings can talk with each other, that becomes your stage set. So again, the Internet of Buildings is something that's just fascinating to me. This was a spectacular failure, by the way. It worked really, really good when we assumed that everyone had fiber to the home. But when you're talking about people that still have like dial-up modems at 2400 baud, the latency killed us. So it was not equal. But we're learning, right? And in the future, maybe this becomes the new standard about how you actually stream. I'm actually, because of time, blockchain is very cool. We're using it for smart contracts, and that's the most you need to know. Smart contracts are when one party says, yes, all the information in this blockchain is trusted with this. We finally are getting to trusted data for the first time ever, because everything else is biased. I don't care how much you think the golden thread is out there, it's not. There's a human behind. Someone put that data into that program or that Excel spreadsheet, and that's bias. This says, I trust your bias. And now all of a sudden we have truth. That's where this is going when it comes to smart contracts. But this is where I wanted to come to, and I'll close out with this. You know, this world of AI, I love this. Hey, ChatGPT, finish this building. Right? It's all the rage. I really, really enjoy it. It's like the next version of Google. But ChatGPT is trying to be Google, trying to be everything to everyone, and it's quite not there, right? Anyone that really wants to get into technical detail, and you start chatting with the, with the OpenAI.com ChatGPT interface, you'll quickly see it gets you about 75 to 80% there. It's not bad. It saves some time. I actually used it with this product, Specifications GPT, because specs are only one half of what you give to a contractor to build your building, right? Drawings is one, the geometry, but it's the narrative about how to do it, right? So a gentleman, a friend of mine named Hugh Seaton created this over a 3-year period working with OpenAI, training one machine, not all the machines, one machine, about the nomenclature, the taxonomy, the ontology behind the way that we speak in the built environment. And what he came up with was Spec GPT, and I could probably do a 3-part format specification written for a 100,000 square foot light commercial building in suburban USA, right? I could probably take me about 40 hours to do that 1 week, a spec, and that's pretty good. That's fast, right? Spec GPT did a better version than I could have written in 42 seconds. 42 seconds. So, architects and engineers, your entire business model since the profession began has been built on billable hours. Good luck with that. You're going to have to rethink your value. This is happening quick. So, other ways of using AI, we're finding that tools like DALL-E 2, which is a takeoff of the Disney movie WALL-E, right? And also Salvador Dali, right? So I thought it was clever the way they did that. These are images that I took from just prompting what I looked at. That's like the new skill set, by the way, prompt architecture. If you know how to prompt correctly, in other words, put phrases and words so that it can come out with the proper type of output that you're looking for, you're a very valuable commodity right now. So prompting, I said, I want a lush view of a futuristic city that mimics nature. And this is what it gave me. Not bad, right? I mean, it gets me there. It gets me from saying that I have 1 million choices to 4. And then I can build from there. So again, AI is not going to take a job, but a person using AI definitely can take jobs. Here's another one called Midjourney. This is actually on a communications platform called Discord. It's free. You can check it out. When you put Midjourney in, this is really where prompts come in. And prompts look like this. It'll say /imagine, and then you put prompts in there. So I want to try something simple. I said, show me as Batman. Stupid AI. So it will tell you the truth and all, won't it? So again, these are tools, they're just starting out, but for a designer, for pre-design, it's a way of generating or generative AI in order to get there. There's some really cool technologies out there that are now trying to commercialize this. This is roomgpt.io. You take a picture of your living room, they've hooked up with IKEA to say, well, this is what you could have. And then you click on everything you want and it's delivered to you the next day. You kidding me? Wow, right? That's a 6-week-old company. I believe it's like, it's an M&A target already. I'm like, these kids love it. Text to space. You can actually go into a space and say, I'd like to have this fitted out for a medical facility, a hotel, whatever, and it will show it to you in real time on your phone. This one's pretty cool. This one is almost like an OCR. You can put like a 2D drawing of a specification or of a specified detail. And it'll go ahead and start to take all that information. But what it does is it pushes it out to the field. So if I'm going out there and a washer is not there and I have a 3D printer, I can literally click, get the image, and print it out. Facility management on steroids, right? These are all just startups, just starting the process in a phase one like I've never seen before. And finally, here's some of the projects, just so you realize that like it's not just cool inventions and the metaverse and all that. We actually do real work. This is a project that we were just awarded. This is for Netflix Korea and South Korea, the people behind a really funky show called Squid Game. Squid Game 2 is going to be here. This is a brand new type of TV and film studio. You can see it doesn't look like anything in Hollywood because we're using the volume, we're using the LED screens, so saving time, saving money. Really proud of this one. This is going to be groundbreaking in November. We hope to have this up and operational first quarter of 2026. But in the meantime, we have the 2D and 3D images that we're putting onto a gaming engine, and that middle part is a public area that we're going to start charging people to come to online. We're going to actually lower our construction budget, our loan, by 3%. This is a $1.8 billion US project. That's a lot of money because we're charging people ahead of time even before the thing's built. Again, trying to get into the kids' heads. Why do you want to be here? I know why my son wants to go here in Qingdao in China. This is our virtual reality theme park. We are putting a 1-to-1 scale Fortnite island here. Every kid that's a Fortnite is going to go, I want to be there, right? Again, this whole idea of cyber physical, be up in the digital, but also create something physical. I think that's where, a lot of folks are thinking forward about how to reimagine those urban environments. Here's some construction photographs to show you. Yeah, it's real. It's coming up out of the ground. This is one of my favorites. This will be announced during COP28 in Dubai. I'm going to be a featured speaker there. I'm really proud of that, speaking on behalf of the UN for climate change. And one of the things we're showcasing that this is in Abu Dhabi. We're going to break ground, a big moment for photographs and all that stuff. But this is going to be Abu Dhabi's first net zero building. What we're doing is we're using water, which I think is an underutilized asset in design. When you integrate water, in this case, a series of waterfalls that fall from the rooftop down to another rooftop, we're actually using generators, using that hydropower to keep it off the grid. We're actually surplus creating energy and then selling it back to the grid. So this is a profit-making net zero building. I hope it works. I'm known for spectacular failures, remember. This one is pretty interesting. This is a friend of mine that was looking at a way of cleaning up the pollution in downtown Dubai. That's the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building currently. And what he came up with was a lung. This is actually a way of taking the existing air in and around downtown Dubai, putting it through a system that is nuclear in nature, breaks apart the oxygen down to the molecular level, and then takes out all the impurities, and then puts fresh oxygen back into the world. This is mimicking like a tree by biomimicry. I thought it was a very interesting idea, but this is one of my favorites. This is our design for Riyadh. This is called the New Maraba, or the Cube. It is 400 meters squared. It can fit 20 Empire State Buildings inside of it. And this is meant to be an iconic element with a surrounding smart community, which is going to be beautiful when it's built. But Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, he commissioned this. And he wanted to have an icon reminiscent of how Paris is always associated with the Eiffel Tower, Big Ben to London. He wants the Cube to be associated with Riyadh because inside is going to be a digital, call it a digital gate to tomorrow. It's meant to elicit a one-on-one relationship using everything from holographics to digital wizardry, this level of engagement, level of experience on steroids. When he actually commissioned it and handed me the keys, I felt like the dog that caught the yellow school bus. I'm like, you really want me to do this? So this is going to be fun. Actually, I've employed a consultant. His name's James Cameron. We're using the same technology that he used to shoot Avatar so that we can actually create at least a 1.0 of what MBS wants. So with that, I'm going to leave you with that. AI is not going to take your job, but someone using it will. Proud to say that I actually have my third book out. I make no money, so I'm not hawking. Authors don't make money on this, right, Jonathan? It's like, this is a really cool business card, but it talks in depth about what this is about. Really proud that this got sold out on Amazon, and I didn't think that could happen, but it did. So yeah, it's about reimagining the urban experience, and it really comes from the thought and theory that I employ as a designer a cultural anthropologist, and she's my first passing of what are we designing, because you've got to understand about the people-centric view of this thing. What works in South Beach in pecking order of need is not the same needs of Coral Gables. So this idea that there's one smart city and it's a silver bullet, you implement it everywhere, that's a load of crap. We're all learning, and that's why I think that get-togethers like this, just to learn from each other, are so important right now, because the urban environments are our final way of looking at the future in a cohesive way. And I'm not talking about communist, socialist, all that other stuff, but how about if we just get along, right? It's all about the people, and when we start talking about people, we also have to start thinking about this. This is right now #1 on Amazon. It's published by John Wiley & Sons. It will be actually released December 12th. We're creating everything I just talked about as a virtual world in the metaverse, as a companion guide, so you're not just reading a book, you're experiencing it. And what I hope that people get out of that is this. No matter what we hear for the rest of the day today and everything we heard yesterday, it comes down to one thing: love. And in a business setting, I think we need to say that more. Love of yourself, love between each other, and love of our cities. And with that, my name's Paul. Thank you very much.
We had a very interesting presentation now, and we want to continue. We create a community of speakers and professionals interested in different aspects of city, communities, and citizens. So we are going to have online a link to buy the books from our speakers. Also to access videos, including the documentary that we are going to have later today. So right now, I have the honor to invite Sara Pezeshk. She's professor from Florida International University, and she's going to present a data-driven hybrid Shoreline infrastructure. Sara.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to share with you today my current research and I'm sorry. Okay. Is it better? Okay. My journey on this project, that it's including my research project from my doctorate and my postdoc and upcoming postdoc venture. This research focuses on innovative and sustainable nature-based solution to make coastal area more resilient and climate to the climate change and sea level rise. As you all know, our coastal area is under significant changes and challenges that we currently facing. The population of marine species, current flooding, the temperature rising, and high sedimentation are only a few of these problems. As a designer, I felt responsible to kind of looking at these problems and try to not only solve and control extensive erosion, but also integrate more nature-based solution into these coastal problems by collecting sedimentation, integrating mangroves and seagrasses, and bringing back biodiversity to the shoreline. The typical coastal protection that we have for erosion is creating a concrete barrier along the coastal area to protect it from the wave attack. These actually strategy, it's creating our coastal area more vulnerable to climate change and storm, basically, and kind of destroying our ecosystem in a way. And they also need high maintenance. And of course, they're not really aesthetically pleasing either, you know, blocking the views or just having these gray, hard infrastructure. It's not really nature-based, I would say. To design start this project, I have initially started with data collection, which is collecting data from weather data, which consists of solar radiation, wind speed, and also getting the water quality from the local buoy that we have. My side project actually is at FIU BBC campus, North Campus. So I have collected the information about the storm surge data and also the flood area and the impact of the sea level rise on those buildings. This is a data-driven project. So I have used these information to kind of optimize the design by integrating the solar radiation. I kind of was able to add more shading to the site and reduce the solar radiation by creating the, as you can see, height changes and texture formation can create more self-shading. So it's cooling down eventually the surface area, as well as adding water data, which I use turbidity level to create more slanted to collect more sedimentation in these tiles. This is using storm surge. The way I use the storm surge data, I have used the height, color coding the height based on the height. I have actually differentiate based on each zoning risk. So the height was defined by these data. As you can see, the design, it's a biomimicry design, which is kind of, it got influenced by, inspired by volcanic rock formation along the coastal area, which is created this modular Voronoi pattern that it's self-organize itself into the surface. It can get easily being placed and create more flexibility to any topography. This project, it's been generated with algorithms, so it's easily make it possible to make those optimization. While I was researching, I came across this study, which is looking at how you can create more biodiversity by creating texture over concrete. So easily by kind of changing the morphology of your concrete, you can kind of bring back these marine species to colonize on the texture. So as you can see these images, they call this a bio protection, which by colonizing these type of marine wildlife on the concrete, you can actually make the performance of the concrete better and actually extend the life span of the concrete as well. So eventually, after all these study, I end up having 4 different modules, which you can see on the right. Biopod, biomarine solid tile, that which mostly controlling the erosion. The biopod, it's housing the mangroves. And the biohollow tile, it's actually collecting sedimentation and filtering the water. As well as the last tiles were biograss tile that is actually helping restoring the seagrass. So this is the rendering view of the landscape, which is integrated, not only gray, but also include green infrastructure. So it's helping to reduce erosion, but also creating this pleasant landscape for people to kind of enjoy their local environment. So then I was looking at how I can make the concrete more eco-friendly. So I have looked into different type of mixes, how I can reduce the cement ratio. So that's like making the concrete more sustainable. So I use different type of aggregates and binders. I reduced the cement by replacing it with minerals, some minerals like olivine, which absorb CO2 and make the concrete and water less acidic. The samples were being tested, and for compressive test and as well as leaching test, and we picked a few mixture to test later on, and then this is the digital fabrication that we have kind of used different techniques of subtractive manufacturing as well as additive manufacturing to creating these tiles. To test this proof of concept, actually, you have to really test that in the real world. So we created these different variation of different texture formation, and we placed it by the water for almost 2 years now. So, and we see very positive results. And this summer, I was collecting some of these data, and then we have noticed that, I mean, as you can see, there were 3 main tiles. One was the control tile, which is the flat version, the typical concrete seawall you see, and the other one was with the texture. So we saw significant changes on collection of many species, like you can see some of marine taxonomy here, from algae, oyster, barnacles, and other macroscopic species that was significantly increased with the textured concrete. The current research that actually I'm going to be working on for the postdoc is I was looking more as a more horizontal. Now I'm going to be focusing on more vertical infrastructure, which is going to be the seawall. I would be, again, using generative design and how I can use actually implement data and using AI for machine learning and generative images to kind of make this process a bit more intelligent. And then again, the same path of material studies, fabrication, and it's like a loop system, so it's always getting the feedback and the data and get optimized. These are some of the initial schematic design for thinking about how I would like to make the interlocking works, and then using robotic to either print these on the site And these are some of the examples that we were thinking to how we can integrate this verticality and horizontality and making a more interesting space for people that they can also enjoy, but protect the shoreline, but also having this intersection between environment and people's need and their experience, and with nature and everything that we have in amazing Southern Florida. So these are some of the schematic initial design that we have in mind. So that was the project.
Thank you, Sara. Right now we have our next speaker. It's Elisa Silva. She's director from Enlace Foundation and also professor from FIU, Florida International University. She's going to show to us a house for everyone, architect as a facilitator. Welcome.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Bernardo, for this invitation. My name's Elisa Silva, and in addition to teaching at FIU in the Department of Architecture, I have an architecture practice in Caracas, Venezuela, and a foundation, or a non-for-profit, called Enlace. I'd like to share a story about a place, an initiative, a lesson. You can be the judge of how to call this experience, but it has already been a lesson for the rest of Caracas. It informs the way I teach here in Miami, and I believe could very well serve as a model for architectural practice, supporting architectures that begin to repair the manifestations of inequalities in our cities. Cities have very complex dynamics. They have been built in a myriad of ways, part of them by immigrants who came to the city to work and helped produce its wealth, but did not find a place for themselves or their families within that produced city. We have our corollaries in Miami and most every city in the United States, in the disinvested neighborhoods that offered affordable places for living to migrant communities. And as capital investment seeks new mines to mint, we should be very wary of the, quote, good intentions that disguise strategies that support financial accrual to the expense of the people who have lived there for generations, and to the expense of the diversity we should value and celebrate, to the expense of the social justice and equity, the right to the city we should be championing as engaged citizens. So I'd like to take you on a trip to see part of my work in Caracas, Venezuela, as a way for us to reflect on the role of architects, planners, geographers, and any enthusiastic supporter of cities. I have thought about the barrios, or favelas as they're called in Brazil, but of the town of Caracas for years and mapped them over a 48-year period. This is a plan from a book published in 2015 that we put together called Cava, Cartografía of the Barrios of Caracas. I've also advocated for public spaces in barrios as part of research I did with the Wheelwright Fellowship from Harvard University in 2012, and was published as a book, both in English and in Spanish, Pure Space and Puro Espacio, in 2020. I've had the opportunity to design and build public spaces and communities. And good intentions led me to push projects such as these in barrios. They were well received and served a purpose for the neighborhood. But the conversations I had with people going frequently, listening, helped to dissolve the preconceived notions I had. For example, that such spaces, such barrios, lacked categorically public space. And this also challenged my role as a, quote, expert. I especially started to worry about the stubborn stigmas the elite, the educated elite, the politicians, maintain towards barrios, and what John Turner, an Englishman who passed recently, but who had worked and made tremendous contributions through his time in Peru, what he termed misplaced pity, prevalent among the multilateral banks and government functionaries that he would invite to witness the construction of the barrios in Lima or Arequipa. And that kind of misplaced pity is actually a way of taking away agency and harms communities more than helps them. Because of those encounters, I learned a big lesson: be wary of good intentions. For example, very legitimate good intentions may be creating the underline in Miami, but they will also precipitate the displacement of hundreds, maybe thousands of neighbors from their homes as the value of land and vicinity rises and moves into speculative dynamics we know so well. So shouldn't a public amenity be for the people living there now and make sure they can stay, perhaps through regulation, which needs to become part of our vocabulary, rather than bank on the returns from the larger wallets of future neighbors? My invitation to architects and the discipline at large is to resist simple solutions, a word I find very problematic, and to be more curious, open, and above all respectful of pre-existences. Listen to neighbors, listen to locals, listen to animals, plants, and a large array of actors and stakeholders. So this is La Palomera in Caracas, Venezuela. And it starts as those proposals and projects of public space, but then shifted in 2018, to Integration Process Caracas, which was a program. It was funded by the US Embassy in Venezuela, and which is basically the State Department, and allow us to host many events in the Barrio La Palomera in Caracas, together with the community, and this happened between 2018 and 2020. It began with a manifesto of the complete city. And in this manifesto, we pledged to acknowledge the barrio, to rid ourselves of the notion that this was somehow a disease that needed to be cured. We invited people from the entire city to get to know the barrio, to dance together, walk together, listen to décimas, which is a form of rhyme accompanied with music, and these were written specifically for the Barrio La Palomera, essentially to enjoy culture and art together. We grew into a very large multidisciplinary team of artists, activists, landscape architects, educators, dancers, and were welcome to the celebration of the Cross of May, a tradition the barrio has observed for decades and which was likely transplanted from their rural origins. We built a 1 to 200 scale model of the entire barrio and its surroundings, which was carried in a procession of the Cross of May by neighbors and musicians. So here you see it going through the barrio and then reassembled. It allowed us to have conversations with neighborhoods about the dynamic of how this place was founded and formed over time. The Cross of May, which is the central part of this festivity and this celebration, was decorated and venerated, just as they always do, followed by a well-attended concert with a lot of dancing and people from the entire barrio, but also the entire city. So this gesture of integration was indeed starting to manifest itself. And this is a drawing of that procession that signifies this particular event as a celebration of the organic urban fabric that typifies our barrios, of its pedestrian scale, and the nuances and temporalities that it holds. These experiences taught me a great deal. I learned to see in La Palomera public spaces all over the place, the bocce courts they have, and that, for example, I don't have in my own neighborhood. The walkways that become perfect spots for kids who feel free and safe to play marbles, unheard of in neighborhoods where parents don't let their kids play in streets because of cars, motorcycles, and the overwhelming sense of insecurity. This space is called La Vuelta de los Jeeps, or a space large enough for cars to turn around, but is mostly used by kids to play baseball, or here being used for a dance. We learned about people's gardens and the stories behind them. This was the message. Oh, here's La Señora Carmen Matamoros and a tour of the gardens that we did. And this was the message that I took with me to the Architecture Biennial in Venice in 2021. The walkways, stairs, public spaces of La Palomera, as they are, work phenomenally well as public space. Exhibited in the middle of Venice, which is itself an organic fabric, was a very easy way for folks to recognize that a place like La Palomera is indeed part of the city. Drawings of the gardens as a necklace of spaces in the barrios, and axonometric drawings of each and every one of these gardens with specific species associated with the drawings acknowledge the barrio. We surveyed and recorded over 260 species, so in a tremendous biodiversity, and this was consolidated in the Ethnobotanical Dictionary of Plants from La Palomera. And all of this in gratitude and acknowledgement to the neighbors who generously shared their stories and their gardens with us. We fabricated this sort of boîte en valise à la Duchamp of that exhibition in Venice that we gifted to the neighbors. Many of these boîtes sit proudly on the shelves in their homes. So all that work led to many opportunities, too many to share in this moment, but I will focus on one, which is the house of everyone, La Casa de Todos. And I would be thrilled if you visited us on Instagram as well to learn more about this initiative in this space. Neighbors showed us an abandoned site in La Palomera and asked what could we do there, and the "we" was so beautiful in that sentence. So we all decided to host a party. It all started as a party where everyone met, that we met over time in La Palomera, all of the cultural groups that exist there, and those that came with us as part of Integration Process Caracas were invited. It was a huge success, well attended by people from the barrio and from the entire city. It happened on the 12th of October of 2019, so a day of discovery. And this led the way to becoming a permanent place for culture and art. And we had it very clear it would be a plural, permanent, inclusive, and complex space for art culture in the community of La Palomera, but present and offered to the entire city. It's been 3 years in the making, and part of that includes the very challenging period of COVID. But we transformed this space, co-imagined it, co-designed it, took advantage of existing knowledge in the community, for example, on how to produce this bamboo roof. And the roof also collects water, which we use in the restrooms, the kitchen, and gardens. And activities began to define how the spaces would get used, more or less spontaneously and organically. And we found permanent places for some of the things we had used in previous exhibitions, such as this orthographic map of La Palomera produced through drone photography. The courtyard and garden occupy the center of this house, and they are tended to by William Diaz, who's a neighbor of La Palomera. And he's been adding folks intrigued to learn more about plants and vegetable gardens. Spaces are used for music classes, storytelling, more gardens, a kitchen for culinary courses, and we make chocolate there too, performances, dances, a market, a library. And there's essentially enough space for all sorts of gatherings and events. And this is been so successful that we're actually spilling into the next door house, which also belongs to the municipality, and we've been able to secure in a long-term lease. We now have over 40 events that take place here, classes, programs, you name it. And this is sort of just the aura and the spirit of the place, which the library that I mentioned earlier, that just infuses it with this sort of energy, and kids come, and pretty much even if they're there for after school homework help, don't particularly want to leave. It's a place where they've made friends. It's a place where adults feel kind of this spark of energy and a sense of possibility through all the transformations that they've witnessed. So this is our calendar of events, and it's the result of over 40 different entities that have come to be a part of this initiative. And just last week we had impersonations, which is wildly popular among the youth, and it was attended by over 100 people. So I would argue that this has now become one of the liveliest places in Caracas, something other communities are keen to emulate, and where everyone wants to go, wants to stay, wants to... Most importantly, this is a place of strength, an actant, as Bruno Latour might posit, where folks in the barrio, from a concrete place in the barrio, are showing the rest of the city how to encourage and practice inclusion, how to model a socially just and democratic expression of urban livelihood. And to illustrate that synergy, we exhibited 3 communities, so La Palomera, El Calvario, and Colinas de Bellomonte, as perspectival theaters reminiscent of Palladio's Teatro Olímpico in Vicenza that you may be familiar with. These are theaters that project activities not only specific to the neighborhood, but activities that are shared and in dialogue with other barrios and neighborhoods. So this piece here is in Bordeaux, France, at the Entrepôt, and it's a part of the exhibition Commun, Architecture avec les gens, which was presented in 2022 at Arc en Rêve. And before that, it was part of the Graham Foundation, at the Graham Foundation as part of the Chicago Architecture Biennial in 2021. I have to say that the experiences of the House of Everyone has changed the way I practice architecture. It has taught me to see architects as a facilitator of dynamics and energies that far exceed my own capacity. The facilitator gives people agency, which is entirely opposite to the architect, politician, or charity that bestows the elusive and misplaced pity that I talked about earlier, or good intentions. Cities desperately need spaces like the House of Everyone. Libraries are a good example, where encounters with folks that are different happen regularly, and this is my students at the Lemon City Library just a couple weeks ago. These are places where we embrace our diversity instead of fearing it, and where we can potentially think of the city together and curate, with intention, an environment that is plural, inclusive, and necessarily complex. So how do we strengthen these kinds of spaces? How do we create new ones? Spaces that are not monetized, but open and democratic. Architects could contribute in very valuable ways by placing their efforts and resources towards orchestrating such experiences. The architect's role, Bernard Schumi posited in his work Common Grounds as posters published in 1976. Architecture is not about the conditions of design, but about the design of conditions. Said another way, architect as facilitator. And what exactly needs to be facilitated? I believe the profession needs to aggressively support gestures of spatial justice, a call to be the, quote, good architect. The good architect is a notion Philibert Delorme brings up in a 16th century treatise on architecture. And it includes these engravings, which are pretty astounding. I'll show it here. So this is the figure of the architect. The architect encourages open structures integrated with lush gardens. The architect has 4 hands and 3 eyes, increasing his or her agility and a keener vision, better equipped to both register and reproduce complexity. It is curiously not focusing on form or objects, but on livelihood and harmony. The rapid escalation of capital investment in land is a very serious threat to our shared livelihood. Our local politicians are eager to encourage these investments while forsaking spaces and experiences that support better livelihoods, and hence the lack of trust that we mentioned yesterday in the presentation about trust in local government. But frankly, architects don't appear to be taking Delorme's mandate to heart very seriously, so that of the good architect. Our common grounds, libraries, public spaces, markets, public transportation, and parks, places where encounters take place, are not thriving and they are not growing, but instead constantly under assault, underfunded, and vulnerable to development pressures. We are collectively today, as a discipline, perhaps closer to the engraving of the bad architect, which Delorme also shares with us. The bad architect is missing eyes and missing hands, roaming in a barren landscape surrounded by gates and fortified buildings. Sounds familiar to our landscapes in cities today. So data, AI, our ever-expanding virtual dimensions, I believe, need to be kept in check. We need to walk neighborhoods, talk with people, a whole lot more, learn from exchanges, physical ones, and champion our commons where encounters take place, encourage a more complex process of engagement, take clues from pre-existences, and strengthen culturally and historically layered urban dynamics. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to assist accomplishments from our speakers, like we heard right now. And so Elisa is doing a very interesting work with her foundation. Congratulations. We have our keynote speaker, Raimundo Rodulfo. He's the CIO of the city of Coral Gables. City of Coral Gables implement a very strong, very powerful smart city technology. And he's going to talk about applying science, collaboration, and experimentation to improve quality of life. Raimundo, welcome.
Thank you, Bernardo. Good morning, everyone. Amazing presentation, so it's inspiring to be here. And CIO of City of Coral Gables, so I started in 2004 in the city as a network engineer, but I came from the industry. So before joining the city, I spent 10 years since the early 90s working as an electrical engineer in the telecommunications industry. Companies like Siemens, Motorola, Bell South. At that time, we were researching and developing a lot of technologies that became the fabric of that modern society where everybody is connected and everybody is carrying one of these things today, but they look different at that time when we were implementing those technologies in urban areas with those big bricks. And they were not digital, they were analog. And then we went digital, and then we went smart because we started using AI that everybody's talking today. We started using AI in the industry 30 years ago for fault tolerance and things like genetic algorithms to make more efficient the way how we diagnosed point-to-point networks and microwave at that time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I'm bringing a little bit of that entrepreneurial and experimental mindset to my job in the city as a CIO, and with an amazing team when we collaborate with all city departments and city leadership and members of the community, but also building an ecosystem of many think tanks and collaborations with academia, industry, members of the community, also to bring that experimental, entrepreneurial research mindset to government. usually you don't see it too much. And I see a time coming when we are going to even generate patents in our own research groups, in our public sector exponential teams, exponential mindset. So basically, all that is part of what we call, and I try to put this in a poster because, the strategic plan is 50 pages that nobody reads. But when I put it in this poster, sometimes you get the picture, is that we have that vision that aligns with the vision of our founder. It's a vision that George Merrick had 100 years ago when he founded the city of Coral Gables as a community with high standards of quality of life, coming from the Garden City movement, the City Beautiful movement, with that vision architecturally of Mediterranean revival community designed. But also he was an innovator because that same year that he founded the city in 1924, he founded the University of Miami, and he donated the land for the university because he wanted a research institution also as part of the community. He wanted education, he wanted research, he wanted innovation. And then that same year, he founded the Chamber of Commerce. He also had a vision for business, for economy, for economic growth, for jobs and opportunities. So he had that holistic vision that took us to this day where I feel when we joined also that smart city movement, we are doing it in alignment with that foundational vision. So we start with that vision that I call it Quality 4.0 and Industry 4.0 merging, because basically it's about total quality. It's a community that has high standards of municipal services and high standard of quality of life, but we bring innovation with that vision, a vision about quality. So, and I had that hat, so I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt, and everything I do, not only I think as an engineer, I think also about quality. I think about the experience, about bringing that total quality experience to the citizens, to the customer-centric. The customers is the community, is the ecosystem. Then we have those focus areas that is about people. It's about improving quality of life, but also bringing a strategic planning and continuous improvement and innovation into that picture. And focus areas are very important. I have the pleasure to be joined today by our Assistant Director for Sustainability and Mobility, Matt Anderson. I encourage you to see his presentation of the Sustainability Master Plan, because at the end, we all work together, not only on innovation, we work together on sustainability, we work together on mobility. So we have a vision that is holistic. So all the units in the city working integrated horizontally, not as silos, basically as collaborators internally. So that same vision from outward to the ecosystem is the vision inward to all the functional areas in the organization. We're working together as one team with one mission, improving quality of life, fostering innovation and economic growth for our entire community. So quality engineering and process improvement framework, what I call framework number 2, is part of that. Then we have framework number 3 is building that foundation of high-speed communications. Without that, technologically speaking, it's very difficult to build that stack of cyber infrastructure. It's very important to have that foundation. And with my background in the telecommunications industry, that's where I focused all our efforts for almost 10 years, from 2004 to 2014, building that foundation. Because that's what we need to survive hurricanes, to have a resilient network that has multiple layers of automated failovers and fault tolerance, so we can continue providing those critical services, 911, first responder services, public safety. Without that, really, we are going back to those years when we had a lot of hurricanes and we lost more than 80% of power and more than 80% of communications as well. So we need that resiliency built in that fabric. And the Smart City Engineering Framework is building that stack from that foundation. That includes also building a human capital. So you need the skill sets. And we wouldn't have been able to do anything what we're doing here without the collaboration with all city departments and members of the community, with academia and industry, but also without building that internal team that has all the skills. In my team, you can find from certified fiber optics installers, low voltage certified cable management technicians, you find data scientists, you find business analysts, you find electrical engineers like myself, network engineers, systems engineers, software engineers. So you have all those skills that makes something like what I call, a little bit joking, like a general contractor, that we are serving all city departments, but we are also an asset. So we are a force that can build things, can engineer, design, build, architect, strategize too. So we can build strategies, which otherwise a medium municipality like ours and an organization like my innovation and technology team with limitations in budget, we would only be keeping the lights on and maybe keeping the customers happy for a while, but not for so long, because we are not keeping the wheels moving, and we are not keeping the team sharp. And at the end, we are not getting things done. So those are the 5 things in my mantra. So keep the lights on, keep the customers happy, keep the wheels moving, keep the team sharp, and get things done. So you will be doing like half of that, because you don't have that innovation capability that today is demanded by the customers themselves. So if you want to keep the customers happy, you need to have innovation, research, and keep the wheels moving too. So it's interrelation now between all those things that we are talking about. And by the way, in cybersecurity, if you are not innovating and you keep up, you will be outsmarted by those that want to disrupt your organization, because they are innovating, sometimes faster than you. So you need also to think about that. It's impossible to keep the lights on without innovation today. So, and then building that stack of infrastructure with limited resources and capabilities requires that human capital, requires that entrepreneurial and research and experimental mindset, but requires the ecosystem of researchers that will bring that brain power, the brain power that you need to augment your capabilities, and also resources, sometimes from federal grants that you need, those grants from NSF that has funded some of the projects that I'm going to talk about. So basically, those frameworks, all those pieces are what makes us entrepreneurial, and also gives us the ability to execute in the long term and also in the immediate term. So this is what we call one of those frameworks that I mentioned. One of those 8 strategic management frameworks is a framework for smart city strategic partnership, research, and collaboration. And the way how we call it is as a virtuous cycle that starts with sharing. But what we're doing today is sharing with each other. So you start sharing your experiences, your challenges, your failures, your successes. And you share, you are transparent with the community, with your colleagues, with your constituents. And then you will learn. You learn from others. So sharing brings the opportunity to learn. Then the opportunity to partner, to create those strategic partnerships with academia, with researchers, with industry, that will give you the ability to start collaboration projects. But they have to be actionable. So there has to be value in the short term, quick wins, quick ROI on those collaborations, because otherwise it's just like getting together and taking a photo. Oh yes, we have a new partnership. Okay, what is the actual value for the citizens? How are the citizens getting the benefit or the impact from that collaboration? So that's build value and then repeat. So that's what we have been doing, that cycle that you see there. Who are our strategic partners? So local universities and research institutions, of course, like this, Miami-Dade College. Let me start from the right side. Florida International University, my alma mater when I did my master's degree. University of Miami, which is in Gables, was founded by George Merrick, and is, of course, our first partner when we talk about collaboration with academia, is the university that is in Gables. And we have extended that with collaborations with universities that are part of that larger ecosystem of research. MIT, Stanford, UC Berkeley, West Virginia University, Georgia Tech, UCLA, and other universities have also done projects together with our team. And I'm going to show you one link that has a innovation and technology bulletin that documents more than 10 years of those collaborations and projects. And there you will find, I would say, dozens of these cases. Now, I'm going to focus maybe on 3 or 4, because for time's sake, that I cherry-picked from those collaborations. And of course, we are partnering with institutions like the IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, the Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers, the American Society for Quality. So those kind of organizations also that they build standards and best practices that we can apply, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel, where you have those bright minds that have developed those standards and frameworks and blueprints that make sense. And of course, with institutions like the National Institute of Standards and Technology that has that federal power from the Department of Commerce, the Department of Homeland Security, and many other agencies that have federal programs. And we know that today there are a lot of federal programs that we can benefit from, where we can get funding for some of these projects that provide a value to the community in a short term, and many others. Then I talked a little about that yesterday during the ceremony, but we have built over the years that fabric of intelligent connected infrastructure. So it starts with communications like fiber optics corridors, gigabit point-to-point and multi-point wireless mesh networks. So a private network that we can exploit also for experimentation as well. When we have a test bed project, that foundation of communications is the first thing that we're going to use. How can we connect those devices that we're going to use for this experiment? And of course, that's our physical layers. Once we have those connectivity hotspots, public Wi-Fi, for example, we can bring those other physical systems, including the ones we're using for the experiments, and the ones from universities, like our collaboration with Florida International University on water scientists on those water IoT buoys that we saw in one of the presentations from FIU. We have them in water canals in Gables. And so once we have that connectivity and we start building all that fabric, we can use this as a test bed, or we can offer this as an asset to research institutions, scientific organizations that say, okay, we are looking for a smart city or an experimental city or an innovative city that has the infrastructure that is ready. Why? Because that allows them to maximize the funding they are getting. They don't need to build too much. They can benefit from that infrastructure for the test and the experimentation. So this is one example of our internal capacity that we have been building. If you go outside, you're gonna meet our GIS manager, Mark Abert. He's in our booth there showing our smart city infrastructure. Mark built and manages this lab. So we call it the Smart City Lab or Geospatial Computing Lab. And we have a lot of interns over the years, from high school to college to undergrad to grad to doctoral candidates to postdocs, all those, from all these universities, sometimes residents that are coming. Recently we had one from robotics from Carnegie Mellon, and we had a postdoc from MIT also helping us with an AI project. And of course, all the local institutions, Miami-Dade College, we're getting a lot of interns from Miami-Dade College. Amazing programs in Miami-Dade College they have built. I have to commend the VP of Innovation, Antonio Delgado, and all the team, Dr. Manino, what they are doing with the AI Center. Why? Because I'm recently hiring from Miami-Dade College a lot of young students that they have graduated, with an associate. It's amazing how already they come already. They know how to build applications, and they know how to architect systems. They know a lot of things that you think you will find more in a graduate student. Why? Because they have partnership with the big techs, with Microsoft, with Tesla, with Google, with AWS, and they are training them in practical skills, and they are giving them the certification. They come CompTIA certified, A+, and all those things. And you see, wow, they are building the talent that we need in all the industry, in all the verticals. Why? Because they come ready. So we have this amazing lab. We have other labs like the virtual reality lab that we use for simulations and training with the police department and the fire department. We have our data center where sometimes we designate an area where we can install certain capacity for network testing. And we have our innovation and technology office where we have what we call our brainstorming area, where we have our digital twin and we can start testing virtual inspections and simulations of scenarios using virtual technology. So the statistics, since 2006 that we began this internship program, 98 IT interns, 55 from college, 43 from high school, 71 became interns in our innovation and technology department, 27 on geospatial technologies. And certain of them were hired. They got positions. So they became employees that today are helping us to continue building that capacity and innovation. And so I talked a little bit about this project yesterday. So I had to cherry pick like 3 or 4 projects that we have done as part of this experimental and entrepreneurial research ecosystem. So the Smart City Pole project started as a discovery at the Consumer Electronics Show. Little I knew when I asked my senior IT system manager, Alex Gamundi, to reserve a booth at the conference because we wanted to have a place to meet with NIST and other organizations we were working with, including our professors from that were going with us. And little I knew when we got there that we were the only city in the US that had a booth at the Consumer Electronics Show, the largest technology event in the world. So that served as our base camp where we conducted a lot of research. We found this technology was developed by aerospace engineers in Germany and applies the same modular design that you find in the ISS or spacecraft for docking and for kind of like plug and play modular design that allows you to have like an evergreen installation, which is very costly when you do the kind of things that we have been doing for years, installing our physical systems in downtown where we have red light cameras, speed sensors, CCTV cameras, ALPR sensors, and environmental sensors, air quality sensors. And then we have public Wi-Fi routers and smart lighting controllers, and I can go on and on and on. So that becomes a high footprint type of infrastructure that you want to minimize, especially in the city beautiful in Coral Gables that we praise about our architecture and our design. So this addresses that problem, also brings the interoperability between different modules, improves also the integration between systems, and brings that edge analytics and AI-powered technology that you need when you need computing at the edge with high capacity and hyper-automation, hyper-connectivity and hyper-automation. So we bring that, and the first prototype in North America is the one that we installed. And this is the Alhambra Circle in Ponce de Leon. This is our financial district in our central business district. And also address the problem that we didn't have that cyber physical systems visibility at that area for public safety and traffic safety. So we addressed multiple problems at the first time with a prototype. By the way, a very low-cost prototype. It was a win-win because the organization, Aiking, they wanted to have a proof of concept in our region. They were already doing it in Dubai and Turkey and Germany, but they wanted to have a proof of concept in North America. So we gave them that opportunity too, for a very low cost. And also our engineers and experts helped them to improve the first prototype. Our city manager, who is a structural engineer, gave them a lot of tips to make it compatible with the building code and the ASCE 7-10 standard for civil engineers for 175 miles per hour winds for category 5 wind loads. And we, in my department, we gave them a lot of input from electronics and inner components to improve it and make it more resilient. So from that, we went to partner with the Italian firm Pininfarina because we wanted also to research how can we make it more aligned with the aesthetics of Coral Gables. So we built these 3 different designs that also incorporate another type of research that I'm going to show you. So this is pretty much how that modular technology works, the way how it is developed in the 3rd generation. This is the other type of research. Not necessarily every research has to be on STEM or in technology. This is a research that involves more arts and architecture and design as a craft. So working with Pininfarina, they did a research together with the Dean of the School of Architecture of UM that I invited to join the discovery team. How can we analyze those 100 years of historic assets in Coral Gables for design that comes from George Merrick's vision? How can we merge that with industrial design applied to technology, smart cities, connected infrastructure, and nature, and come up with something like this? This is one of the designs of the next generation of those smart city poles that is called Archway into the Future, Archway in the Future. And you see this rendering here in Miracle Mile in Coral Gables. Another inspiration was taken, for example, from Mediterranean columns that twisted design, also from nature, and also from previous industrial design that Pininfarina did for other verticals and industries. And they came up with this second design that also incorporates the aching advanced modular technology. And another inspiration came, for example, from studying those overhangs and blossoms in Coral Gables, nature and architecture, and inspiration from European cities that also were an inspiration to George Merrick and to George Fink, architecture of Coral Gables. And they came up with this third design. So all of them are being manufactured in Europe now, and we are going to have them soon in a few months in Coral Gables. So that's a platform that we have that is called the Smart City Hub. And this Smart City Hub platform is like an open data, open collaboration platform that invites also that collaboration from researchers. We have open APIs, and we have students and researchers at the university that they're using those open APIs for their own research. It's open, they don't need even to ask permissions. And we don't have the bureaucracy of having to sign like agreements and legal agreements, because it's open data that has already been vetted, that is for public use. Our digital twin also becomes an experimentation platform that invites partners. All of those platforms, they are open, they are transparent, they are open to the public. They invite collaboration from researchers, from academia, from students. So if you want to know more about our digital twin and Smart City Hub platform, and you want to collaborate yourselves, you can go to our Smart City Digital Library that I'm going to share at the end, or visit coralgables.com/digital twin or coralgables.com/Smart City Hub. And another research that has been happening over the years is with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have something that is called the Global Communities Technology Challenge, or GCTC. And I started collaborating with them since 2017, and now I am one of the leaders of what they call superclusters. I'm assigned today to the Smart Building Supercluster, and I used to work with other superclusters before. Basically, it's a think tank. Federal government, Department of Commerce, NIST. NIST is pretty much the innovation agency of the United States of America, and they, for a century, they have defined standards for what is a second, what is a meter, but also today standards across the board, even for quantum computing, post-quantum encryption is being developed at NIST today. So, and the most used cybersecurity framework that all the verticals and industries and sectors use also was developed by NIST. So we have collaborated with them because they bring also that think tank power from all sectors and from scientific labs at NIST. And we have, these are three, actually, this is not ours. These are three case studies that NIST published about City of Coral Gables, about all those projects that we have been working on. One is a case study they published about our digital twin. They published a case study about our connected infrastructure, like the one that Matt is going to talk today, about electrification and decarbonization infrastructure, like electric vehicles and charging stations. Also, multimodal mobility infrastructure, smart kiosks. So they published a case about that, smart transportation. They also published a case study about our Smart City Hub and how we bring cyber physical infrastructure into a Smart City Hub. So you can see all those case studies published by NIST also brings us the knowledge from their experts to know how can we make them better. Because every time they publish a case study about Coral Gables, the first thing I ask them, okay, can you tell me what are the opportunities to keep improving it and make it better? Or how can you help me? Because you have resources and a lot of brain power and institutional knowledge. This is another project that we are working. This was funded by the Department of Energy Advanced Research Project Agency, ARPA-E, a sister of DARPA and other advanced research project agencies, like the ARPA-I for infrastructure. They funded this project with $5 million. This is a classic example of a project that has a high probability to be funded because it had a municipality that was willing to become a test bed, or how they joke with me, a guinea pig, and also has a scientific research institution. It has the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, which is one of the national laboratories of the Department of Energy, and also had an academic partner. UC Berkeley that was going to do research on carbon emissions. And it had members from the industry, innovators. It had Siemens, it had Unix, it had Aimsom, and TTS. So basically, it had all the components, high probability of being funded, and it was funded. This project basically aims to leverage digital twin technologies, machine learning and artificial intelligence, high-performance computing for real-time control of traffic. Basically, manage the intersections, manage the connectivity between connected and automated or autonomous vehicles, cabs, with intelligent signals. The goal is to optimize traffic flow, optimize energy use, encourage electrification and decarbonization of the fleet, of the urban fleet, but also improve quality of life. How many times you are waiting at an intersection, you are the only one waiting, and the traffic the traffic signal is still making you wait. So that also increases the carbon footprint, the carbon emissions. And so what is the intersections are intelligent? They have vision, they have computer vision, they have analytics and predictive control. So they know what's going on. They know the flow, and they manage that more in a more intelligent way with AI and machine learning algorithms. So the PNNL has a lab project called Transec that has been doing that for many years, a lot of research. And they have a supercomputer, a high-performance computer that is managing Transec applied to traffic. So a small city like ours, we could only dream of those capabilities. With what we have, really, we don't have those capabilities. But partnering with science, industry, and academia, we can use those capabilities. So this is a way how Autonomia is the name of the project, Autonomous Intelligent Assistant, is working on this right now. We already developed the digital twin with industry, and it's not our city's digital twin that I showed you before. It's another digital twin only for this project, for traffic. And we already gathered a lot of data from the county, from FDOT, and from all the sensors in Gables, and we are analyzing that data with data scientists from the and postdoc researchers from UC Berkeley and from the PNNL. So we are already working on this model. And you see that's the way how traffic is going to be negotiated and estimated. This is how they portray. This is a slide from them, from Dr. Sonia Glavatsky, who is the PI of this project. She presented the project recently at NextCar in Detroit. And this is what she presented. She presented us as a team that is working together with them as a demo partner. These are all the partners in the project, like I mentioned before, from industry, academia, research. This is a way how they are portraying this digital twin to work. A simulation how the digital twin is going to apply the intelligent control. Listening to the basic safety messages from all those connected vehicles, but also being able to use that as an input to the model that is going to negotiate the signal phase and timing of the signals, the traffic signals. You know, that red, green, yellow is going to be adjusted in an intelligent way for all those algorithms. And this is the way how they are simulating this in Gables from the industry standpoint. This is what UC Berkeley is doing now. They are using now data that they are collecting from this project to try to estimate with equations that were developed by Dr. Marta Gonzalez from one of their labs. Those new equations are estimating carbon emissions based on traffic analytics. So it's very complex. It's not as simple as you can think that, okay, you know traffic density, you know traffic flow. Can you predict carbon emissions? It's not that simple, especially when you have multimodal traffic behavior, and also you have other fits into the or other variables like penetration of cabs, electrification. That's unknown 100% today. But now cars are connected more and more and more. So that data is being ingested into the project too. So this is a simulation from Dr. Gonzalez's lab at UC Berkeley, and they did it in the metropolitan LA area, which everybody who has been in LA so knows that they have a traffic problem. So that's one of the places they have been applying that analytics. So this is how the in-car technology is going to work from TTS, one of the industry partners. So we have an industry partner that is developing the in-car technology. one that is developing the signal control technology, and also we have one that is developing the digital twin technology. And this is the Transect technology from the PNNL, High Performance Computing Lab, that I mentioned before. They have been doing this for many years, to a point that their machine learning algorithms can predict traffic flow with a very high accuracy today. That's another use of AI, applied AI. So now, science also is being tested in Coral Gables for the first time. For many years, engineers have been using, but to the left, these equations for model predictive control, or MPC, for decades, in all fields, in all engineering fields, traffic engineering, but also other engineering fields. Now, one of the researchers of this project, Dr. Draguna Babri, she's the co-PI of our project. She wrote a paper that is below, if you can find it, differentiable predictive control, an MPC alternative for unknown nonlinear systems using constrained deep learning. You will find this in that journal. So this paper explains it way better than me, what they are doing now, what they call differentiable predictive control, or DPC. These equations model predictive control in a different way. They have a computational power, computational factor. P is a policy that is coming from deep learning. So basically, they have that computational element embedded into the mathematical equation, which is that little p that you see there. So that has been tested in a lab for 3 years and has predicted systems very accurately. For the first time, it's going to be applied in a city environment, in an urban environment. So that's also a way how we, being an experimental city, are also contributing to the advancement of science in general. This is a topology that shows systems engineering standpoint. Okay, this is another project, and that's the last one I'm going to talk about for time and reasons. This is a project called ADA, Artificial Intelligence Digital Assistant, funded by NSF as part of the STEER Labs project. We were one of the cities that were part of the initial cohort of cities of STEER Labs by City Innovate, funded by the National Science Foundation by NSF. So we were the only in Florida, as you can see in that map. So ADA was born because we needed to come up with a capstone type of project or challenge to invite the universities that were participating in this project, in this program, to help us solve a problem. So the problem that we proposed to this challenge was, how can we make the experience of the users of our smart city platforms easier, more user-friendly? So basically, those platforms, they are a wealth of information, but they can become overwhelming. You're finding data, you're finding resources, apps, etc. It's difficult. Why if you can ask a question to an AI assistant? So that's how this project came up. And we partnered with Dr. Saif Savage, who was SETI under SETI at MIT for AI advisor of the White House, and one of the top researchers in the world for a human-computer interaction, a human-centric design for AI. So that sounds like a paradox, making AI more human, if that makes sense at all. So we work on that, and ADA now is live as a beta in our Smart City Hub. If you go to coralgables.com/smartcity, you will find Ask ADA. And it's being used even by students by middle school. Recently, I talked to some young kids from middle school, Carver Elementary. They were using ADA to research about beehives. And another collaboration project with and on energy efficiency, building a microgrid. Dr. Norcin Celik, also funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies. We built a prototype, and it worked very well at a simulation scale. Looking forward to find funding so we can build this kind of connected microgrids in our public safety buildings. So these are photos from the ecosystem. That brings, being part of a dynamic ecosystem like this requires also a lot of work. So we need to take the time. Sometimes, I'm too busy and I'm doing 20 more things, and my team is doing 50 more things than what I'm doing, and we still find time to do things like this, to come to events, to learn from others, to collaborate, to hold events. We have held a lot of events from the Smart Cities Council, from NIST. These are the researchers from Autonomia at the top, and these are the researchers and collaborators from NIST, the GCTC, and from the Cities Today Institute, another think tank that I collaborate with, from US Ignite, another think tank that we collaborate with. So all those pictures here show you a lot of work to keep this momentum going, to keep the team sharp. And that has helped us also to get the recognition from the industry. So these are some of the awards that we have received also for this kind of work, for innovating, to keeping at the forefront of civic innovation, for civic good, also to improve quality of life for our citizens. Imagine how quality of life will be improved when we improve traffic in all sense, in safety, reduce accidents, reduce carbon emissions, working together with sustainability. We also have to share and publish. So we have published a lot of scientific papers in multiple journals. If you go to our digital library, you will find those papers that we have written or co-authored with FIU, MIT, and other institutions. And here, this is the digital library. So if you go here, you will find a lot of more research and case studies, especially here in our bulletin or newsletter, which is the first link there. So that newsletter, coralgables.com/tech stories, has a lot more cases and stories and case studies of those collaborations. And this is our amazing team in the Innovation and Technology Department that keep this momentum going. So thank you. We have a question from the audience.
I have a comment. I know we don't have a microphone. Can everybody hear me? I just, Raimundo, thank you so much. And you're so humble because I wanted to make mention that Coral Gables received one of the world's top 7 intelligent communities, top 7 in the world. And they still remain to be a beautiful, integrated, intelligent, architectural community. So I just wanted to say thank you. You didn't have that up there, and I wanted to make sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we are going to have a fireside chat. We invite Matt Haggman. He's the vice president of the Beacon Council and responsible for a program called Opportunity Miami. He's doing a great job promoting Miami in bringing innovation, working with the companies, with the universities, and it's really very interesting. We are going to listen now. In Laura Gaviria, we are going to have this chat now. Please. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bernard. Hello? Can you hear us?
Can you hear us from here?
Can you guys hear it? Oh, there we go.
Hello. Perfect.
All right.
Cool.
Okay, so I guess we're what's standing between everyone and lunch. So we'll try to make this a fairly brief conversation.
Awesome. So it's a pleasure to be here. And
And maybe it's helpful just for you to introduce yourself so people know, who you are.
Of course. So I'm Laura Gaviria Halaby. I know Matt from a long time ago. I used to be part of SoftBank Latin America, a venture capital fund that invests in tech companies around the world, and especially we deployed like $8 billion in the region. Recently joined new startup in artificial intelligence, but more importantly, I live in Miami since 2015, and I always loved and admired the work that Matt has done for the community, and we've seen ridiculous amounts of change since 2015 and even before. And maybe we can start there, Matt. Like, how has Miami evolved in the last 10 years?
Sure. So, it was about, this is work that we did together, and this is prior to Opportunity Miami and Beacon Council at Knight Foundation, we had the opportunity to think anew about sort of what's next. So we think about Miami. And this was all the way back in 2012, so going back more than 10 years ago. And, and thinking about trends globally and what we were seeing here, hit upon the idea of building a tech and startup community in Miami. Actually, as it happened, Alberto, when I arrived at Knight, had been a reporter at the Miami Herald, Alberto Ibargüen, the CEO at Knight Foundation, still the CEO at Knight Foundation, said, go talk to people for 4 months and tell us what's next for Miami. So a really interesting opportunity to think about a place that we all love. And looking around, it really felt like now is the moment to lean into tech and building an ecosystem here in Miami. And the reasons were really both because, number one, Miami had gone through this renaissance, sort of thinking about building the art and cultural life of the city, about how we've seen our neighborhoods and downtown and Brickell and, it's set across our community from Little Haiti to Wynwood, revitalizing. And Miami to become so uniquely international. So a place that's culturally alive, neighborhood that are revitalizing, uniquely international, more than 50% of our population born outside the US. And it felt like that's an environment where we could build a really successful startup and tech community. Meanwhile, globally, the bet was that talent and funding will become more mobile. That while the primary centers of innovation won't go away, new places will begin to emerge. And Miami can be one of those places. And, and along with you and so many, friends and colleagues and people across our community, we've all dug in to building that ecosystem. And now 10 years later, it's still early days in Miami. But think about how far we've come and now how Miami is so on the map as a center of tech and innovation in its own right.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you went all over the world to actually see how tech ecosystems are built. And some of the mistakes that I see some cities doing around the world is that they just try to copy what's out there, stakeholder for stakeholder, rather than thinking what makes their city unique and how they can be different. You were very conscious of what made Miami unique. Can you share a little bit more on what that was?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, Miami being so highly entrepreneurial, as you look at business creation, Miami ranks among the leaders in the country as being so uniquely international. As I mentioned earlier, how Miami is a place that has more people born outside the U.S. who live here, and this is Miami-Dade County, not a small sample size, than any metropolitan area in the entire U.S., more than New York, more than L.A. So uniquely cosmopolitan, international. This is not a place where you need to teach entrepreneurship. It's in the DNA. But now we're at a point, and at conferences like this, to really spin forward and think about what's next. As we think about that next 10 and the next 20 years. And that's what the initiative Opportunity Miami really trying to lean into. Right? Where should we be going next? And while 10 years ago, really leaned into tech and making Miami one of those emerging centers of innovation and company creation in the world, as we think about the next 10 years, really where we're leaning in on is climate tech and really seeing climate as what's next. And by that, I mean, not, of course, resilience and sustainability is critical, but how we're talking about it here, and of course Opportunity Miami housed at the Beacon Council, an economic development organization that's focused around job creation. How we're thinking about this is that, we're on a journey. That is that the entire global economy is transitioning to one that is net zero, right? And that journey is one that is needed, but it also presents the business opportunity of our lifetime.
And what are those fields of opportunity that you see in climate tech that are emerging in the city?
So the amazing thing with this is that it's really the whole economy that has to shift, right? How we get around, how we produce food, how we cool and heat the dwellings we work and live in, how we manufacture things, where we get our power from. All of that has to transition. Right now, we're already seeing, in how we get around, we're already seeing that transition playing out as it relates to automobiles, right? As we're beginning to see the shift to EVs. And we're going to, and the bet is that we're going to see that ultimately in every corner of our economy. You know, Mark Andreessen, as we all know, famously wrote that Mark Andreessen is a venture capitalist with a firm called Andreessen Horowitz. And he famously, more than 10 years ago, wrote an op-ed called Software is Eating the World. And he said that, you know, ultimately every business will be impacted by technology, whether they know it or not. You know, whether the taxi driver, you know, waiting for a cab fare knows it or not, technology is going to disrupt that person's job. And of course, rideshare came along and we've seen that happen. The thinking now is that as we look ahead, actually you could write that same piece, Software is Eating the World, and replace it with climate. And that is that every company, you know, will ultimately be affected by climate, and the companies that really lean into it as the great opportunity, the companies that are building the home builders that are building the net zero buildings, the companies that are producing food in a way that is fully sustainable and net zero, those will ultimately be the companies that will be rewarded and do much better, not only doing the right thing, but ultimately financially rewarded as well.
Yeah, and I think we've had this conversation or this topic for many, many years, but I think we've never felt it so specifically, right? Like, I think now we can go summer after summer and really feeling the effects of how climate is impacting the way we live. So I love that you're replacing software is eating the world and definitely climate, and it's something that everybody should have, like a climate strategy. Going back to what you did 10 years ago in terms of looking at around the world and seeing the tech ecosystems, how they were being built, is there a particular city, country around the world that it's doing a very good job on how they're tackling climate tech?
Sure. Well, so right now, for sure, in the lead are cities across Europe, right? Because, you know, in so many ways you can think about the transition to net zero and building a sustainable future is sort of a stool on three legs. You know, it's built on civic activism, which is so important. It's built on really good policy, and it's built on innovation and entrepreneurship, right? And really need all three. For a long time, prior to the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, as related to policy, the U.S. has been a real laggard, right? Really behind. Now that's beginning to change. But for sure, as we think about policy, the combination of policy, civic activism, and entrepreneurship, Europe has been the lead. That's it. And that's where we see, you know, like Christian Hernandez with 2150 VC in London, which is focused specifically on climate tech, or Breakthrough Energy Ventures, actually up in Boston, Bill Gates's VC fund that's investing in companies driving the transition to net zero. That said, recently had a gathering with folks from both of those VC firms and was asked that question. And they said, actually, though, that the jury is still out. That is, that there is not one place that has defined itself as sort of the center of climate tech innovation. And they actually said, you know what, and this is coming from, in Christian's case, someone who lives in London. He said, you know what, Miami actually could be that place. And he argued that because in so many ways Miami is, and I certainly share this view, that Miami already is a place that's associated with the challenges from climate change, notably sea level rise. So after this summer, I think we would add extreme heat to that too. And he was saying that, you know, that in so many ways we can, as a community, turn what is a vulnerability into a great strength, right? And that what's in front of us, and certainly this has really been the thrust of Opportunity Miami, which we launched 18 months ago. And you can go learn more, subscribe to the newsletter if you wish, all that stuff, going to opportunity.miami. That's the website, opportunity.miami. But the feeling is that really that what's in front, our great opportunity in Miami, is to be a global climate solutions hub, is to be the place where the next generation net zero sustainable companies are built. And the thinking is that this is, or it's important to note that this isn't just purely aspirational. By that I mean it's happening right now, right? As we think about this world that's coming, the transition to electric vehicles. Well, one of the largest car charging network companies in the U.S. is on Miami Beach. They're publicly They're publicly traded. They actually announced that this year, I think they're going to close in on about $120 million in revenue. A real company, right? I mean, we have OBE Power, that is also based here. That's now branching out into five states across the country. We have, as we think about food production, Miami, about 25 miles south of here, the largest indoor aquaculture facility in the world, Atlantic Sapphire, a Norwegian entrepreneur, has decided that we need to in this case harvest salmon in a way he ultimately thinks we can get to net zero in producing salmon, and he's doing it in this massive facility in Homestead, of all places. So we're saying. Lennar, the biggest home builder in the country, they have a venture arm called Lennex that's investing in companies that's coming up with things like clean concrete, right, as we think about building those next generation homes. So what's happening right now, and what the opportunity for all of us is to really lean into it and really accelerate and propel this trend.
Excellent. Just to have a show of hands, how many in the audience have an electric vehicle? Okay, very little.
Okay.
Okay, we need to start thinking about that transition. Definitely, I love what you said, that Miami could be at the center of that example to the world. But how do you reconcile the mixture between we need to make some changes as a city as well in terms of mobility, in terms of construction, with economic development? Like, how should a city look at that?
Well, I think where we're going right now is that ultimately sort of sustainability and economic growth and development, it's beginning to align, right? Now, some parts of the economy, it is fully aligned, right? I mean, what we've seen already as it relates to electric vehicles is that electric vehicle manufacturers are actually doing better financially than the incumbents, and so now all the incumbents are racing to do EVs themselves, right? Other parts of the economy are going to take a little bit longer, right? I mean, the thinking is that in manufacturing, that's going to take a little bit longer, and in fact, in some areas, markets alone will not solve for this, and that's where we really do need policy to help.
Agree.
Now, with the Inflation Reduction Act, I think it's one thing that's incumbent upon all of us right now is to really lean into it and really understand the different opportunities that are there, because this is unprecedented investment from the federal government in trying to hasten the transition to a net zero economy, right? So the opportunity is in front of all of us to really understand what's there and leverage it here as best we can.
One last question before we open it for questions. So definitely Miami has like the location for it to be like in the center of this climate conversation, the fact that we are surrounded by water for sure, that we're experiencing extreme weather conditions. There's the will of the local governments to actually do something about it. What are we missing? Or what are the things that we need to evolve? Do we have the education perspective and the students that are focused on the thing? Do we have enough entrepreneurs that believe this is a topic where they should be investing their time? What are we missing to make it like the right ecosystem?
I think all of the different elements are there to different degrees in terms of political will, in terms of there being strong civic activism around this, in terms of companies that are really leaning in. But I think that the big thing, just like back in the early days when we were, focused on building a tech ecosystem generally here in Miami, what we need really are a few really big home runs, right? Mm-hmm. We need a few of those companies that are being built right now that really knock it out of the park and sort of really arrest everyone and sort of get everyone's attention and sort of to make it abundantly clear that this is a future, and this is a future that is both going to be one that's sustainable, but also one that's job creating and propelling our economy. And with a few of those here, can really cement the notion that Miami is the place that is building that and really is the hub for climate tech all around the world.
Yeah, and I think definitely those role models will make a difference. Just opening up for question, if there's a question from the audience. Go ahead. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so we're actually seeing some interesting entrepreneurship to solve that very problem. So OBE Power, which is an EV charging car network company, their model is they will go to condo companies and they will assume all the risk and investment, right? So they're going to HOAs right now and saying, hey, you don't have to spend a dime, but you know, when people are charging, that's our revenue source. Right?
I see it in my building, actually. That's the way I charge my car. It's a building, and then Blink is the one who owns the equipment, and then you just park there and you pay for the electricity that you use as if you were doing a Blink station somewhere else within the parking lots.
Is who covering it? The yeah. So their whole bet is that they have to pick places where there's lots of activity, so the costs are covered, and actually then profits can be won. So what they have to do is they have to find a place where there are lots of Lauras who have EVs who want to charge them up. By the way, as we think about that future with EVs, you know, the thinking is that the whole model of having gas stations, that, you know, places that you go to charge up, that the model for EVs going forward will be one that you charge your car just like you charge your phone. You charge your car as part of daily life. You know, so whether it's overnight in your condo garage or whether when you're shopping for groceries, things like that, it just becomes part of every day and not actually. And so in theory, that's an example of a transition that, you know, will hopefully actually save you time.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Matt, as always, a pleasure being here with you.
Lara, thank you. Thank you all.
Now I'm going to invite Andy Bueno. He is a storyteller, and he created a documentary about cities. So the title is Infrastructure is Clumbing Our Minds and Bodies. Let's watch. Come on, please.
And when he says, let's watch, what he really means is let's watch Andy talk for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll watch. So I wanted to give you just a brief intro to why we're here. I mean, not big, why are any of us here? But who am I briefly, just as context? So I've been in the infrastructure business for 25 years. So planning, urban planning, traffic engineering, transportation corridor studies. So I know how, I'm a people watcher, but it was my job to plan and design places that are great, especially my bias for people to walk and ride bikes and use the bus. But when we talk about smart cities and sustainability and being futures ready, it's easy to get wrapped up in emerging technology. One reason why I like this event is it's so unlike most smart cities events in that we're talking about human flourishing. I love technology, though. I should be clear about that. One of my favorite pushbacks on people who say, and I'll say in my people group of bike walk advocates is, they're just trying to push technology. Technology is fantastic. Language is technology. Like, we need absolutely technology. So just as a way of setting up what we're gonna watch together, and I promise this won't take us all afternoon, I'm working on a full-length documentary connecting health and infrastructure. And along the way, I put together this short. This is about 20 minutes long that we're gonna watch that sets up some of these basic conflicts. And the way I would share it with you is that if we're thinking in terms of generations, it's like 4 people ago, not long ago, if you were wearing a white lab coat and you were to go up to another white lab coat doctor and say, you know, I think the reason why so many people are dying in surgery is your muddy hands. I think there's these invisible boogeymen on your fingertips that I call germs, and they're making people even more sick. You would not be taken seriously. It wasn't that long ago that germs, these invisible creatures, were a mystery. We just thought, as society, advanced as we were, it sucks, but a lot of us are gonna die when we go visit the doctor. And so I think some of us planners, architects, urbanists, engineers, however you classify yourself, built environment people, we get frustrated that cities aren't retrofitting, cities and suburbs, I use these terms very loosely, places retrofitted or built for healthy lifestyles. And I think it's in part because we're trying to sell soap when people don't realize that germs exist. So this 20-minute thing that we're gonna watch ends on a cliffhanger on purpose. It's designed for conversation. As a conversation starter, get people asking bigger questions about the built environment and hopefully lead us to a point where we can successfully sell soap. So if you guys are ready, I will take a seat.
We're in the midst of a public health crisis, and it's impacting people of all ages and all walks of life. In March of 2022, the CDC published a study that found more than 1 in 3 students felt persistently sad or hopeless. And almost half of adults in the United States report frequent loneliness and social isolation. Rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide have steadily climbed over the last decade. More than half of the country is overweight or obese. Childhood obesity has more than doubled in the past 30 years. It's bad for the body, leading to problems like heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and cancer, and it's bad for the mind, leading to even more anxiety and depression. What is happening? Medical research has shown that America's top 10 causes of death are all made worse by our physical surroundings. Our bodies suffer under the weight of sedentary lifestyles as physical activity becomes designed out of our neighborhoods. Car dependency has become a breeding ground for the health problems that plague us. Not the automobile itself, but the way our entire modern infrastructure is built around an automotive lifestyle. U.S. Surgeons General have been sounding the alarm for years. Dr. Margaret Hamburg said, "We need to make our communities more walkable, bikeable, and accessible to transportation. We need to create parks and green spaces where people can get outside and be active." Dr. Jerome Adams said, "The built environment has a profound impact on our health. The choices we make about how we design our communities can either promote health or lead to chronic disease." And Dr. Vivek Murthy said, "Loneliness is a growing public health crisis that has profound negative consequences for our physical and mental health." Dr. Murthy is especially worried about our kids' future. He stresses the importance of regular physical activity like walking, bicycling, and exploring outside with friends. But our physical surroundings and social norms have made that incredibly difficult. And it's not just children. A doctor prescribes a daily walk and bike ride for a Parkinson's patient. But when the patient looks around at the width of streets and speed of traffic, he knows he can't possibly fill that prescription. So put aside the half-truths from those famous civil engineering reports about crumbling infrastructure. The terrifying full story that impacts each and every one of us is that the built environment is crumbling our minds and bodies. Let me tap the brakes. This is not a film about banning cars or compelling people to move downtown. My goal is to help provoke conversations about the links between health and infrastructure. The uncomfortable truth is that while one group of highly educated experts knows what's healthy, other groups of highly educated experts are preserving what's unhealthy. Our nation faces a growing mental health emergency. Rates of depression have skyrocketed 60% among teenagers in the past decade. Anxiety and depression now account for over 30% of all disabilities in youth. They're reporting loneliness and despair at alarming rates. Adults are struggling too. Depression rates have increased over 20% since the 1970s. Anxiety disorders are up 15% among adults. A whopping 40% of adults report feeling lonely on a regular basis. Loneliness increases the risks of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and even dementia. It takes a massive toll on our well-being. We have an epidemic of disconnection that's making all of these issues worse. Our physical surroundings play a significant role in our mental health. It starts with what we see. Scientists have discovered that our mood is affected by the buildings and streets around us. Embodied cognition is how they describe the way we internalize the places we inhabit. Infrastructure can nourish our minds, or it can trigger dissociation, which is a break in how your mind handles information. Doctors say that we suffer when our surroundings conflict with our physiology. That's why it's so important to understand the typical American arterial, with its car traffic and bland architecture, does not fit us as humans. Humans are social creatures. We need community. But our infrastructure prevents us from fulfilling this basic need. We've engineered vital social capital right out of our lives, sometimes in subtle ways. Neighborhoods designed around cars have eliminated front porches, corner stores, parks, and public spaces where we naturally connect. Endless rows of single-family housing separated from other types of land use have replaced diverse, walkable communities. That type of common infrastructure can even cause the brain to respond in the same way it would to trauma or isolation. And of course, trauma and isolation lead to poor mental health. In fact, there's a growing number of combat veterans moving to walkable neighborhoods as a way to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. The right neighborhood can be such a powerful remedy that it takes the place of prescription pills. The stuff that's all around us, residential areas, shops, parks, and the streets that connect them. That infrastructure can provide our minds with steady regulation or instability, belonging or alienation, calm or distress. Psychologists, research scientists, and general health practitioners agree that mental health is a complicated topic. But those experts also agree that Americans are much more likely to suffer if they spend most of their time in and around car-dependent infrastructure. Actual and perceived social isolation are associated with early death. Your mind tells your body it's just not worth living. One recent report said that the health risks of missing out on social connection are 15 cigarettes a day. Worse yet, there's a causal relationship between social isolation and suicide. And for every suicidal death, another 20 people attempted it. Conversely, having a group of friends has a protective effect against suicide. It's hard to overstate the importance of designing places that make social engagement something that happens effortlessly. America's built environment is also taking a toll on our physical health. According to the CDC, the price tag for poor health is over $900 billion per year. Almost all of our country's healthcare spending goes towards treating preventable chronic diseases. Less than 5% of the recommended amount of daily physical activity. People need safe, convenient places to walk, not just sidewalks, but destinations. Air and noise pollution is far worse for people living near busy roads, so it's not enough for a sidewalk to exist if it exists along a stretch of road that's still harming residents. And on top of that, it's deadly in America to walk across the standard 4, 6, or 8-lane arterial. Systems constantly remind us that sitting in cars is the obvious choice for mobility, even as that lifestyle erodes our bodies. Sitting around all the time fuels chronic diseases. Heart disease is the leading cause of death, killing over 600,000 Americans annually. Someone in this country has a heart attack every 40 seconds. American obesity rates have tripled since the 1960s, and that's no surprise considering most neighborhoods developed since then were oriented around household automobiles. It takes a lot of effort to be physically active when our surroundings discourage it at every turn. An estimated 5.3 million people die from causes associated with physical inactivity every year, which prompted Stanford University researchers to measure activity across millions of people. Doctors already knew that women are more at risk of obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and other problems related to inactivity than men. The Stanford study found that a lack of walkable neighborhoods is far worse for women than for men. Think about that the next time you see a commercial with a mom hauling her family around in a new SUV or minivan. If the medical community is so sure that walkable neighborhoods are vital for physical health and mental health, then why are they so rare in the US? Why does America seem to be hell-bent on unhealthy infrastructure? The key message from the scientific community is this: an active and social life is healthier than an isolated and sedentary life. The built environment does not have to be a death sentence. It can be a remedy for the physical and mental ailments I mentioned earlier. The treatment is infrastructure that promotes physical activity and social connections. That means easy access to amenities and services, housing, schools, parks, plazas, groceries, restaurants, places of worship, swimming pools, retail, dry cleaners, and so on. It means being able to walk or walk to a bus stop, ride a bike or a trike, hop on a scooter. These are easy options in a healthy neighborhood. Young and old, rich and poor, strong and vulnerable, we all benefit from healthy infrastructure. Medical experts are not alone in their diagnosis. Transportation engineers, land use planners, and politicians make public statements about the need for healthy infrastructure all the time. As a matter of fact, 2 of the major professional organizations for engineering and planning have special programs dedicated to improving public health. Everyone seems to know the treatments, and yet the country is suffering. Why? The treatments that the U.S. Surgeon General and many others have been pleading for are encountering roadblocks. The planning, design, and construction of neighborhoods involves a ton of people. I'm going to focus on 3 important groups who are blocking the prescriptions for healthy living. The first group are the professional engineers. This group is responsible for junk infrastructure in 2 ways. 1, their traffic analysis measures in how quickly cars get through a section. And 2, they insist the amount of car traffic will always increase. So their solutions are that we need more lanes for car traffic. They use a chart called level of service to grade intersections as acceptable or unacceptable. It's the key to traffic analysis, and it has nothing to do with safety or health. The grades are A through F, just like a school report card. The letter grades were a stroke of genius because everybody wants A's or B's. D's and F's, of course, are embarrassing. But in the level of service chart, a D means you're still getting through an intersection in less than a minute. An A means there's nobody around to wait for. No pedestrians, no bicyclists, no outdoor dining, no window shopping. As grades slip from C's to D's, the transportation department spends millions of dollars to build more car lanes so the average driver doesn't have to wait a full minute during rush hour. For all 24 hours in a day, the intersection will now be more dangerous and any signs of community health wither away. As if this upside-down grading system wasn't bad enough, public streets are then engineered for reckless driving. Design influences behavior, which is a tricky subject because transportation experts aren't trained in psychology or neuroscience. Decades of research shows that all the basic decisions like the width of a lane, the number of lanes, bus stops and benches, the type of street lighting, these all influence how people drive. And it turns out the default design choices of road engineers are meant for highways, not neighborhood streets, not even the arterials that connect one neighborhood to another. The engineering leads to higher speeds, more traffic crashes, more pedestrians hit and killed, and more cyclists hit and killed. Everything pleasant about a community interferes with the goals of standard transportation analysis and design. A street with no delay is a street with no life. It's unhealthy. The second group setting up roadblocks are the planning professionals. These are the people who write, update, and enforce land use policy. We're talking about all the rules and regulations about how property can and can't be used. There are 3 important ways planning props up junk infrastructure. 1, the zoning rules that dictate where development happens. 2, the large area planning projects that reinforce segregated zoning. And 3, the small area requirements for new or infill projects. First, the zoning. Planning departments at city and county levels used zoning as a powerful tool for good and for evil. Most notoriously, zoning has been used to segregate people by race and class. But they also used zoning as a public health benefit because cities were hotbeds for pollution, filth, and sickness. In the industrial era, the idea of mixed-use development brought fears of an early grave. If a new factory was coming to town, the local government would map out a plan to accommodate all the new employees and subsequent traffic. But as industries evolved over the decades and technology helped to clean up cities, land use rules have stayed the same. All across the country, local development rules require or incentivize development patterns that spread everyone and everything across the landscape. Work zone, school zone, shopping zone, entertainment zone, and a sleep zone. Then each category starts getting more prescriptive subcategories. So, for example, townhouses are put in their own zone away from the single-family houses. And forget about having a corner grocery store on a street with houses. And with all the land uses spread out into their own zones, the obvious outcome is that Americans drive everywhere all the time. Not just work commutes, but all the errands before, during, and after work. Half of America's car trips are less than a few miles long. We're in a car-first environment because of the organized zones developed by planners and approved by local leaders. The second way planners bring junk infrastructure is through large area planning projects. Local governments put together comprehensive plans that cover large areas of land and long time horizons. These projects start with land use, but then incorporate transportation systems. So 2 of the groups blocking healthy infrastructure begin to work in tandem. Plans take shape for more ways to move cars around the zones because the assumption is that land uses should be segregated. It goes back to that industrial era mindset of cleaning up dirty cities. Networks of wider roads and bigger intersections take shape. These large area plans get the attention of the State Department of Transportation, where more planners are drawing maps for road expansions at regional and statewide levels. Finally, the rules for new and infill development projects. This is where the engineers and their traffic analysis get heavily involved. Local planning departments set the rules for the type of traffic studies that have to be performed and the grades that they expect to see on the level of service report cards. They also set the rules about the amount of car storage a development has to provide. So for instance, let's say an empty nest couple wants to convert their garage to a music studio and offer piano and drum lessons. Before you even think about the traffic impact studies that they'll have to pay for, keep in mind this type of home-based business is probably illegal where you live. The planning profession has worked so hard at perfecting the process of organized land use that it's lost sight of the outcomes. Healthy infrastructure violates the rules written and enforced at the local government level. Which brings us to the third group setting up roadblocks: politicians. Everything politicians do is influenced in some way by lobbying. The more money, the more influence. Infrastructure and all its adjacent fields are no different. So let's do a quick exercise in following the money. There are two economic powerhouses who know exactly what they want from elected leaders. First, transportation, or big road, is a $1 trillion industry. In 2022, they spent $286 million buying power and policy. 2/3 of those lobbyists are former government employees. The revolving door of employment means it's in a politician's best interest to get deals done with lobbyists because pretty soon that's where they'll be working. Massive public works projects always get spun as wins for a community. Some are, but most aren't. The reason is that there's not much profit in walkable infrastructure compared to automotive infrastructure. And if you're wondering how successful they are, Big Road wins 3 out of 4 bills that they champion. Another $1 trillion industry that's relevant is pharmaceuticals, or Big Pharma. In 2022, that industry spent $374 million on lobbying, more than any other industry. More than 2/3 of Congress gets donations from Big Pharma. After NBC reported that childhood obesity rates affect nearly 1 in 5 kids, the pharmaceutical industry came up with a solution: weight loss drugs. 2023 is the first year that the American Academy of Pediatrics included anti-obesity drugs in its guidelines. At the same time, media outlets, who get 75% of their advertising revenue from Big Pharma, are declaring exercise as a mark of political extremism. The very thing that the medical community has been begging Americans to do is being labeled socially dangerous. Being part of a $1 trillion industry doesn't make corporations evil for developing drugs or highways, but it does mean their motives should be kept top of mind. These massive industries prioritize profit, and it's clear that sick and car-dependent Americans are good for business. Healthy infrastructure is designed to fit who we are as humans. It leads to more social interaction, which improves mental and physical health, which leads to fewer pills sold, which leads to lower profits for Big Pharma. And that same healthy infrastructure makes walking and bicycling convenient, which leads to less dependency on cars, which leads to lower profits for Big Road. Taking a stand for healthy infrastructure is not in a politician's best interest if they have their eyes set on a national position. We're in the midst of a health crisis. Medical experts are writing prescriptions for healthy infrastructure, but infrastructure experts keep giving us junk instead. In spite of all the roadblocks, we do live in an exciting time. Reform is happening slowly and suddenly. Americans just experienced the pandemic that exposed the frailty of life, especially for those with pre-existing conditions like heart disease, obesity, and cancers. Lives were turned upside down for 2 years, and many are still reeling from the tumultuous period, struggling now with anxiety and depression. The human body is precious. The human mind is precious. So what are we going to do about it?
So I know we are, oh, is the mic not working? Do I need it? Oh, okay. I don't have prepared comments. I made a couple of notes just in case everybody was bashful. But reactions, feedback, I'll give the opening feedback to put us all at ease. I realized after we started rolling, oh, this was the penultimate version that had a couple of my errors left in it. So I feel like you guys are part of the process. This I spelled my own name correctly, so that was good. How about just as a starting point? I'll open it up this way. So hopefully you felt this at the end. I am an eternal optimist. Not like just I'm silly Pollyanna. It's because I'm right that I'm to be an optimist in this sense. And the reason is the core issues that dictate how our built environment comes to be, how things are planned and designed, so much of that is guided at the local level. So in a lot of ways, it really doesn't matter who's president, who your state senators and congresspeople are. So much of what's awful and could be wonderful is decided at the local level, which you know is often less than a dozen people. I mean, depending on the size of the county or the city that you live in. So I know that so much of what ails us is fixable, practically fixable. Reactions, you all do work related to the built environment, so yes.
Thank you. I didn't get to see all of it. I apologize, but I saw the first and the last parts of it. But I think it might be good to turn those barriers into opportunities in your video. In other words, politicians aren't really a problem if you can work with them and figure out, what's floating their boat. I often disparage people that criticize politicians. I mean, who put them in there? So it's my view that they can be very helpful, and it's just a matter of outreach. And I think maybe some of those recommendations, turning those barriers into opportunities, would be more useful to, helping us move forward. Good work.
Yes, so I don't know if you could hear it. She was saying, she's picking on me for picking on politicians. So one of my favorite things that's part of the full-length documentary is this idea of stated positions versus shared interests. So stated position would be something like, I say, our neighborhood should have bike lanes. Neighbor across the street says, I hate bike lanes, we should never have bike lanes. So those two stated positions cannot coexist. So maybe that's a planning commissioner that lives across the street from me. It could be a politician. The shared interests, if I'm asking questions, what do we really want? What do we like? Well, we like a quiet street. We like slower cars. We want our kids to feel safe without us hovering over them. So when you ask questions like that, this is my happy place, asking those kinds of what-if questions, then you find these shared interests. So suddenly, maybe you take the labels away and you don't say, we're going to be a bike lane city or a pro-bike city, but we're a city of calm, quiet neighborhoods or something like that. Then you get the politicians with shared interests with the rest of us, and so I think that's how we lead to those kinds of local successes is just like that. Yes, in the back. What's the advice for what? I still can't. Oh my goodness. What is my advice for future engineers? Where to begin? Well, so I'll tell you this. I often stiff arm giving advice. What I often do is say, here's the thing that's worked for me, maybe this will work for you. Because I know we all come from different backgrounds and have different contexts, different applications. I started my career as a traffic engineer. Now I say a lot of words and write a lot of words ridiculing that industry. Someone asked me recently what radicalized me against my own industry, and I would say the industry. Engineers radicalized me against status quo engineering. I would say, I will give this advice because I think I've learned a lot from it, and I think it applies to any industry. Anybody, whether you're planner, architect, engineer, be intellectually curious. And that it sounds easy and just philosophical. Ask questions knowing that you might not know the answers. You might have to change your mind. You might be wrong. Just ask questions, trying to find out if this is my outcome, healthy communities, how can I reach that horizon? You'll see examples of the opposite of intellectual curiosity all the time. Any social media platform, any networking event, the opposite would be asking closed questions or kind of framing gotcha questions, like rhetorical questions like, oh, so you think no one should ever drive a car ever? I gotcha. Or, oh, you think I should bicycle 30 miles to work? I see. That's not curiosity. Curiosity would be, how might we adjust our local land use policy to legalize a variety of housing? Why is it possible to legalize a mixture of uses in our neighborhood? Asking those kinds of questions, looking for answers, I think as an engineer would be invaluable and frankly unique.
It was excellent, and it really made me start thinking that I hadn't before. Two questions is, now we know that it's becoming driverless cars, right? They're telling that's going to be, there's not going to be, and maybe we'll need less cars because you won't need to own a car, I won't need to own a car. And also, where do you see that going in your scenario? And the second part is, we're thinking about now AI and chat GPTs and what's going to be the future of AI. How do you think that could help us in this environment?
So she was asking about autonomous vehicles, and I'm going to answer it more broadly, autonomy, and then AI and machine learning. If I get too stuck on the first, remind me about the second. So, like I said at the beginning, I love emerging technology. I love technology, period. Clearly, I love language because words don't stop falling out of my face. But I love emerging technology. I think one area, to the issue of stated positions and shared interests, among urbanists especially, and I would call myself that. I don't mean just like a city snob. I mean people who are interested in population clusters and how do you plan and design for human flourishing in a population cluster. That's how I would define an urbanist. The conversation continually goes towards robotaxis, flying Ubers, and it's true that that sort of thing has been under development for a long time. But if you look at the technology, just the starting point, autonomy, things moving without a driver of some kind or an operator, there are some really exciting applications that have a much shorter start point than, say, a complex robotaxi system in San Francisco or Washington, D.C. or Richmond, Virginia, where I am. And that is fixed route services, things like trash, package deliveries that are on certain timelines, mail, the local bus would be a big one. And the interesting things where technology like that has dramatic life changes is not just, oh, we're a cool, smart city because we have an automated bus that reminds me of the metro that doesn't have a driver anymore. But it's things like, if you have these sorts of technologies in, let's say, the local bus system, you don't need things like the giant mirrors hanging off either side, which are used by engineers as an excuse for lanes that are way too wide, that encourage fast driving by the rest of us, that lead to more crashes and higher speeds at intersections and awful life as a pedestrian and or bicyclist. So just simple things like being able to remove the mirrors and skinny up the vehicle a little bit, that's transformative. Same thing for trash, being able to skinny those vehicles up. We're already seeing it. Like, I'm old enough to remember that there wasn't always a robot arm coming out and picking up a trash can and hurling it into the back. My earliest dream when I was 5 was, I want to be one of the guys riding the back of the trash truck. I sometimes still smell like it, but that was my dream. You don't need that anymore, right? And so those kinds of services with autonomy, you can have those things at off hours. They're not mixing with restaurant traffic and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of exciting potential. If you think of what's the goal? How are we trying to make places greater for us to live and thrive? Or is it just like, oh, it's cool technology, we gotta force it in somehow? So that's a way that I would encourage urbanists to think about and ask questions around autonomy, is not just robotaxis. AI and ChatGPT, I think I took a lot of notes in the earlier presentation. This is more technology that I appreciate. And I think, frankly, there are a lot of jobs within planning and engineering that should be replaced by machines and computers. I mean, years ago, you probably have heard the phrase victim blaming, but if a pedestrian gets hit by a driver at an intersection, you'll often see the headline is something like, car crashes into such and such, bus crashes. It's always about the vehicle and then the human being, and then what was that person wearing? What was their wardrobe? Bicyclist, comma, was crushed on impact. Like, they say the outfit all the time as if it would make a difference versus a vehicle. And so that kind of thinking is called victim blaming. But high visibility clothing is one of these topics that would come out all the time. You need to wear a vest. You need to wear brightly colored things. You need reflective this. You need reflective that. Forget for a moment that a ton of people who work in service industries like restaurants and things like that, their uniform is black pants and a black shirt, and they have to ride a bicycle or they're walking at night to a bus stop. But forget that for a moment. So I would poke at my own industry and say, what we need is high visibility engineering. You have FHWA guidelines, AASHTO guidelines. You have all these official design guides that build in flexibility into the design. Here's a range of possibilities. You choose. Use your engineering judgment. And what our industry does is say, judgment, like, what's that? So where AI and things like a ChatGPT could come into play, a couple of us were messing with this yesterday, interacting with AI to ask questions about how might you, if this is the issue, cars versus bicycle violence, how might you make this network safer? And we're getting feedback from a chatbot that you won't get at the DOT or the Public Works Department because they're afraid to say things like, perhaps you should consider a protected bicycle lane network. Here's why. And so again, it's asking questions. It's not saying you should build a bike lane everywhere, but it's asking these kinds of questions. That to me is exciting. I know many of them are friends, but I know plenty of engineers and planners who should go ahead and find something else to do so that a computer software program can take their place.
Thank you.
Anybody else? In the back? What would I say to students who are studying artificial intelligence just generally speaking? I mean, I think it's a really exciting field. We were hearing earlier, there's different applications. There's this sort of large language model where it's a matter of finding information that's already out in space and collecting it and sharing it. And then there's, of course, others that are learning to adapt. I think whatever it is, there's going to be some exciting exciting applications for the built environment. I mean, even if you were to take like the subjects that I'm connecting, health and infrastructure, and start interacting with just a large language model and getting a back and forth around, well, how does car dependency impact mental health? You're not going to get a right away feedback of, well, here's how. But if you think, well, what does it mean being forced to drive everywhere all the time? And start asking questions around that, like sitting for X number of hours per day, not walking, like comparing different ways of life. The more you're developing AI, you're going to make light speed versions of those types of research tasks. So again, I would say stay curious. Just ask questions, lots of questions, and keep in mind what are the outcomes? Because one of the big failures of professional planning is falling in love with process rather than outcomes, which is how you can have environmental studies that get awards for a wonderfully comprehensive environmental study, and you go, oh, what part of the environment did you save? And the answer is, well, I didn't save the environment. I just documented how the road expansion is going to rip apart the environment. But it was comprehensive. Like, keep in mind the outcomes. What's the point of whatever it is you're trying to do? And then figure out how, as I'm learning AI tools, how can I use those tools to reach my outcomes of a healthier, happier community?
Sort of referring back to my presentation yesterday, and I'd love to talk about this, but this project in Davis that I find so extraordinary, that's now 50 years old, as I sort of dive into the people who designed it, which they started designing it in the 60s, but it was a husband and wife couple. Her bachelor's degree is in human ecology. And when I read that, I like, oh, so it was designed for people because she studied people. I mean, to me, it's kind of really important. Many insights about why this thing is so amazing.
So if you couldn't hear, he said that older developments were developed by people who were trying to figure out how to understand people.
This in California is leading the edge of this kind of community. There's 2 of them in California. So this particular community is so and they in fact and there's many papers written about it.
Mm.
Planners but they were trying to do another one 10 years ago, and the city of Davis didn't allow it. I mean, there's so much evidence that this works, but the planning,
Yeah, that's I think some of the most inspirational biographies for me anyway are when you look back, especially hundreds of years ago, biographies written about people from hundreds of years ago. They were connecting dots from all sorts of areas of life, because that was just that was expected. Like, of course you're going to think of those things. But now our industries are so siloed that, for example, traffic engineering, you only think about how do you minimize car delay at an intersection. And there's no thought to, oh, now that I've done that, I've slaughtered a bunch of people. Those trade-offs are not considered. Speaking of trade-offs, you remind me also, one of my favorite quotes is from the economist Thomas Sowell. He says, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. If we can think of that, and what do humans need? What do people need for flourishing? We could get to some wonderful outcomes. And again, like I said at the start, so much of this is fixable at the local level. That's what keeps me motivated and excited. Do we have time for one last, or should I?
One more.
All right, last question, winner. So I avoid saying, I appreciate those comments. I avoid saying we need anything because it's easy to jump from we need to I want. What I want. I think one, as far as motivation and inspiration, aspiration, all these great things, I would say encourage people to plan the neighborhood or the community that they want rather than what they think is inevitable. Because if you just go by what your local DOT or public works department says must be, then you're kind of like, ugh, you're gonna be shoulders crunched all the time, like, ugh. But if you figure out what you want and what's great for the community, you're gonna find, you'll accidentally lead to a walkable environment, a bike-friendly environment, a transit-friendly environment, and you don't have to be ramming these ideas like, I'm gonna get this car owner, I'm gonna get them to go from 3 cars down to 2 cars. It'll accidentally happen. We will accidentally clean up the air. We'll accidentally live healthier. I hate exercise, I hate it. But I'm at my healthiest when I'm walking from meeting to meeting. And when I first got to Richmond, there was a period of like 6 years when I wasn't obese, but I weighed more than I needed to. And just all my walking and I like to ride a bicycle just to get around, not for exercise. And I was way healthier after that. So you guys have an advantage. I mean, I'm a person that likes to talk, I'm a drummer, and I like to eat food. And you're talking about a culture here that loves like socializing, parties, art, culture. So when you focus on those kinds of things, it doesn't matter what terms you use and say, we really need to rally our neighbors to support walkability or sustainable neighborhood. Use whatever terms fits your neighborhood. It might just be, we need to have a party-friendly neighborhood, or we need to have a family-friendly neighborhood. Whatever it happens to be, you're gonna end up in the same outcome, and that is a healthy neighborhood.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, we had a very good, interesting documentary, and we need to think about that because we need to change things we are doing right now. New design, new projects, new way to live, and more health. We are going to stop right now for lunch, and we'll be back 2 p.m. sharp. Speakers, follow me. Thank you.